And at this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask if there's any declarations of interest. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to, I believe we have a deputation. Mr. Clerk, I wondered if you could introduce, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, your first deputation is S. Maketsky, General Manager, East Gwillimbury Soccer Club, making deputation regarding the CPRC Capital Project number 19-034, Anchor Park Sports Field Lighting.
Welcome. Microphone here for you. And I understand you were told around 5 minutes. If you're in the middle of a sentence, and I'll give you the high sign. I won't cut you off at all. This is really important to hear from our soccer club. Welcome.
Here today to speak on the capital project in the budget regarding the lighting system at Anchor Park. I'll just quickly speak to that. So just a brief history of the club. The club was formed in 1975, operated until 1978, took a little break for 5 years, was resurrected in 1983, and has operated continuously since then. The mandate of the club is to provide opportunity for any person to play organized soccer at a recreation and competitive level, to assist all participants in reaching their potential both on and off the field, and be prepared to adjust to changes in order to maintain its objectives in the future. So that's kind of where we're going to focus here. As the club has grown and the community has grown, we've had to make some changes to the way we operate. So in 2010 was the first major change. We expanded the club to include a full-fledged adult program featuring men and women's teams in 4 different divisions. By 2014, our division had grown to 500 registered players and over 25 teams. This growth over time has placed stress on existing infrastructure, particularly the existing 2 lit fields at Mount Albert Lions Park. Then last season, in our planning, we joined the York Region Interclub League, which is a league made up of all similar-sized clubs in the York Region. It allowed us to create more age-appropriate divisions for our recreational players, going to a 2-year system: U12, U14, U16, U18. But in doing so, it increased the demand for lit fields that are U16 and U18 divisions, since the majority of those games kick off at 9 o'clock. So a brief history of Anchor Park. I know many of the councillors were involved, has been involved with this project over the last couple of years, but for the ones that are new to council, the project to install lights at Anchor Park has been previously approved by council in recognition of the needs at that time of the club. After public consultation, the elements of that project were altered to accommodate some of the up-to-date technology and lighting solutions, which increased the project scope outside of what had been approved previously. Through this consultation process and the work being done, we have been continually assured the lights would be installed in each of the subsequent seasons. Accordingly, we had planned our growth in anticipation of the 3rd lit field to be constructed before 2019. With each delay and each year without a 3rd lit field, the existing infrastructure has been placed under more pressure, as were our resources to provide a high-quality soccer program for our members. So the current situation, we have 2 lit fields, both located in Mount Albert, which provides us with 14 time slots at 9 o'clock. Historically, there has been a second group operating out of Mount Albert, the Mount Albert Lions Soccer Club, which is an adult-only men's program. The traditional relationship between the town and that program has been 3 nights of lit fields at Mount Albert Lions. We have honored that arrangement, and we wish to continue to honor that arrangement because it's counterintuitive to not honor that arrangement. So that reduces the number of time slots for us to 11. Currently, we require 13 slots to operate our program properly. While we're able to shuffle programming and schedules to other times location, that is neither a short-term nor a long-term solution for us. As I mentioned before, the current situation also puts the two fields under extra stress, increasing the wear and tear of facilities and increasing the cost of maintenance. As these facilities are also used by all of our members, from 4 to 14, those members as well, it has a direct impact on the players and their residents. So this is just a little chart on our projected light usage. Just a note that we have, on the adult section, we're using a very conservative growth model. We don't have the data yet to recognize what the growth rate is of the new residents coming into our older age programs. We have a pretty good handle on what that growth rate looks like for their children, but we're not sure exactly yet what that's going to look like. So we've used a 2% growth model here. So as you can see, in 2018, we need 13 slime slots. We have 11, and that just continues to grow over time to where we're 5-6 time slots short by 2021 if the situation with Anchor Park is not resolved. So just a little bit of Anchor Park. So it's our premier field in EG. It's where we play the majority of our competitive games, and we like to, for our older competitive teams and our adults to provide them with that later time slot to increase the coolness of playing, for lack of a better term. So that's really the brief history. I stayed way under 5 minutes. Just encourage you all to connect with us on social media. I know some of you follow us, some of you don't, but if you ever need to reach us, the information's there.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of committee? I guess one question that I would have, soccer is certainly having an upswing. We know a few of us have been here with the lights introduction and where we need to go. Where do you see East Gwillimbury soccer in 10 to 12 years from now?
So we would anticipate the growth rate to match that of the towns. So currently we're at about 10 to 15% of the population is currently enrolled. We expect that to continue. So as the town doubles in size, we will double in size. We've already seen a lot of that growth at our 4, 5, 6 level, but again, it's growth dependent, right? So
we're hoping we have a lot more.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations also on being at the New Year's Eve event. I thought that was brilliant of you to meet and greet a lot of new residents, and I know that they walked away knowing that we had a really good soccer club in East Gwillimbury. So whomever thought of that, it was brilliant. The numbers were great. Questions? I'm not sure whose hand was up first, so I'll work down the line.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in interest of disclosure, while I don't have a pecuniary interest, I am a member of the EG Soccer Club. In fact, 3 of my 5 family members play, including myself. The league I play in plays on unlit fields because we play on the much smaller field. But what I will say is that the league that I play in added 2 teams just last season, and so we're full, and we don't have any more mini fields to play on. So from a growth perspective and an adult program, that's the case. And certainly the adults who come from other municipalities to play in our community are always very complimentary of the state of our fields. They are amazed at how well they are maintained and in what condition they are. So I'm hoping that we can continue to deliver that same level of service to the club. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It'll come to a surprise to no one that I do not play in the soccer club. There's always hope. There, through you, Madam Mayor. My question is, thank you for your presentation. It was excellent. It's a substantial sum of money you folks are looking for, and I think it's a good investment. I was just wondering what you would say to a citizen on the street that heard what the price tag was and maybe raised an eyebrow. What would you say in a brief elevator speech to them as to why East Gwillimbury needs this investment?
I think the soccer club provides a value to the residents, developing a lot of soft skills in youth players, team commitment, dedication, hard work, all that kind of thing. I think soccer in general needs to do a better job selling its value as a soft skill, not a pathway to rich and glory or any of that. So I think that's where I would head in terms of the value to the community as a whole, not necessarily to the soccer player, but to what that soccer player develops into, which leads to, you know, a better community all in all.
Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. Thank you for the great presentation. My kids are fully grown now, but for many, many years, I was a soccer mom watching them on the fields. And the thing I loved about soccer is that it was so accessible. You know, unlike hockey, you didn't have all the equipment fees and the skill level anyone can play. My kids started in kindergarten. All you have to do is be able to run. And for that reason, I'm so supportive of the soccer program because I think it's the type of thing that we need to get kids who aren't traditionally active, to get them more active, as well as those who are very active. It's a great way for them to get out there and burn off some energy. My question for you is the pressure point only the lights? Like once there's lights, does that free up other fields, or do you see over the next 5 or 10 years the pressure point also being number of fields?
Definitely in the next, again, pacing to the growth of the town, there will be pressures placed on some of the existing facilities, the smaller fields, as Councillor Clemente pointed out, the 5 mini fields in Mount Albert Lions Park will eventually outgrow that in the youth divisions. So there definitely has to be either some restructuring of the way the fields are laid out at Mount Albert Lions Park specifically, or additional projects built or reconfigured.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad you brought up about the stress on the fields. My years on the school board, I know how costly overusing fields is. So I think that always has to be weighed against the cost of new fields or lighting to expand the use of other fields. Thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Councillor Persichini.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just want to say, when I came here in 1959, they don't even call it soccer, they call it football. And there was hardly any soccer teams going on. It's really sure come a long way. And as a little kid in school, I used to play soccer. I was in defense, and I really enjoyed it. And I think it's the greatest thing for, you know, growing up and having the physical activities and getting involved, get excited, get the kids going. Now my granddaughter's playing soccer, and she just goes around. She's the only girl. They're all boys, and she's the only girl goes crazy. She has fun, and I think this is a great opportunity for the young people to develop their brain and also their body. Healthy body creates a healthy mind, as we all know that. So good luck. And I also thought about, before I finish, having someone sponsor besides coming to the town, and hopefully we can support you to raise money, like a sponsorship of a big company that may want their name out there. I'm a great believer in building bridges on people sponsoring things, and I've always worked in my business doing that kind of stuff, get people to sponsor, so it helps out a little bit, and every little bit helps. Anyway, have you ever thought about that?
So we do have a pretty vibrant sponsorship program. A lot of the great businesses in EG have contributed a lot of money to the operation of the club over the years, not in the kind of sum of money that we're talking here, but in an effort to keep prices low and get more kids involved, we have leveraged a lot of the communities and the community businesses in the area. So,
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if this question is to you or to staff. I think I heard that council previously approved these lights being installed. So could someone explain to me what the holdup has been? Is it just money, or is there other reasons? I guess Mr. Karmazin?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the project was approved in the 2016 capital works budget. So previous to that, there would have been a capital project put forward in late 2015. The budget for that project, after significant community consultation, was deemed to be insufficient. Namely because the residents closely adjacent to Anchor Park had indicated that there was some discomfort with the potential of lights going in and light migrating into their private property. With these types of lights, the light poles are rather high. They're between 30 to 40 feet high. Since then, over the last 5 years, lighting technology has increased significantly. The standard today is adjacent to private properties is directional lighting, which is LED lighting. And LED lighting provides very little light migration past where it's set onto the field. With that, there's also significant energy savings and energy efficiency, and you're also prolonging the life of your lighting system. However, that comes at a price tag. It's no different than, as a simple analogy, of going to a hardware store and purchasing an incandescent bulb versus an LED bulb. You'll find there is a significant cost differential. So we then went back to our landscape architect and our lighting technologist, took a look at the technology and how we may incorporate that into this, into both sports fields, the premier soccer field, as well as the baseball diamond. And we adjusted we reported out to council, and we adjusted the capital sheet accordingly moving forward. So that's a bit of the history of where we are today. And it does relate back to the consultation process that was undertaken in 2016.
Just in addition to that, thank you, Aaron, for that information. I do drive by the fields in Mount Albert daily, and I have a granddaughter that's a terror on the field out there through the summer as well. And I'm sure that Councillor Roy DiClemente is only, I've never had the honor of watching her play. It is true that soccer is becoming more important, not only to all families, parents and children as well. So I would really hope that this council will seriously consider moving forward at some point over this year or next year to get this done.
Councillor Foster.
Just a quick question, through you, Madam Mayor, I suppose, to Mr. Karmazin. The two expected parks, or the two parks that are going to open in West Holland Landing near Highway 11, do either one of those have soccer fields?
Through you, Madam Mayor, those two parks do not have soccer fields. They do have baseball diamond, as well as twin tennis courts. I should also point out we do have a lit soccer field being constructed at this point for hopefully substantial completion come April, May 2019 in Queensville at Valley View Park. So that will create some additional capacity over and above this project being contemplated by council.
Thank you. I knew there was one somewhere. I couldn't remember where.
Thank you, Councillor Roy DiClemente. Sorry, Crothers, please.
One question for staff. If this was approved in this budget, would the lights be up for the beginning of this season?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is our intent, is to make best efforts to have the lights in place. We have brought the electrical service into the park with the parking lot lighting and security lighting that was approved in the last capital works budget. So we are prepared to put the poles in and put the lights in, and it would be our intent to expedite the work as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, staff. Thank you for your presentation. there are two people on council here that in early 2000 took a look at Anchor Park and knew that it was a wonderful facility but needed a lot of work. It had been let go, and it was our premier park, and so we, Councillor Morton and I were two that at that time that decided that this was a facility that needed to have dollars put into it and to be a premier park in our community. So that started back in 2000, I'm going to guess 2002, 2003. We might have opened it in 2003, I'm not sure. But this is a logical thing to happen in this community now, to have the lit field, to expand the soccer club's ability to provide soccer for our new communities that are coming in. I think there's ways of working around the lighting issues with the residents, and those residents that perhaps are just not aware of what technology has come to in this day and age, that it is an asset for them to have a park in their backyard as opposed to a detriment. So we will work with our staff and see where we can go with this, but I can assure you that I am personally very interested in moving this into a lit field that will expand your opportunities, not only now, but down the road as well. Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I felt it important to also note that this isn't just a soccer field that we're lighting. There's also a baseball diamond there. As well, members of committee who weren't on council previously, they will recall that a couple of years ago there was some significant damage done to the park because in the evening hours, because somebody took a vehicle in there and really tore the field up. And so, from a security perspective, there's also some incentive to do that. So I just wanted to point out, there's not just one user group, but there are others who are also expecting and hoping that we'll step up for this. Thank you.
The activity in this facility and the lights will make the community safer, for sure. Thank you. Could I have a motion to, thank you, moved by Councillor Persicini. All those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you very much. Mr. Lamanna, I believe we are into presentations. I don't know that we have any other deputations at this time.
That is correct, Madam Mayor. The rest of the presentations are as listed on your agenda, with the East Gwillimbury Public Library Board going first.
Welcome. Good to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much for having us. Is this on? Okay. Just please excuse me if I have to start coughing.
Do you have water?
I do.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Good morning.
Take your time. We're here for the morning. Not that you can be here the whole
No,
morning
I
presenting, but we want to hear what you have to say. Thank
Okay,
you.
well, thank you very much. Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us here this morning. East Gwillimbury Library opens minds to a world of information, creative expression, and a love of reading. We build community by fostering learning and discovery, and we enrich our community by promoting culture, literacy, and access to resources and programs. This is the established vision and core purpose of the East Gwillimbury Public Library. The public library is a special place in our community that can be nimble and quick to respond to community needs, partner with organizations to provide the services and learning that is needed. This is seen by our adoption of STEAM programming and services. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, and arts and math. Our hotspot in technology learning programs, and our commitment to building a healthy and active living community. The library is the place and space in the community where you can come to learn new skills, make connections with community members, borrow the internet, a Chromebook, a book or video, and travel to the depths of your imagination using GoPros, circuitry kits, or explore the past by borrowing a pass to the Sharon Temple. Our community can register online for a library card and gain instant access to our virtual branch, which includes 24/7 streaming of TV shows, movies, download an ebook, or maybe learn a new skill through lynda.com. 2018 marked a year of significant change for the East Gwillimbury Public Library. We launched self-service checkout units during Ontario Public Library Week, a multi-year planning project that has already seen incredible engagement from our community. The library reaffirmed its commitment to arts and culture in York Region and assumed operations of South Lake Cinemania. This is a TIFF film circuit, and we did this in late 2017 and throughout 2018. The library has proudly reached a new demographic and has already seen sellout showings. We started offering English conversation circles to our new Canadian residents and are planning a multilingual collection for 2019. We had bid farewell to our CEO of 6 years, Michelle Ellen, and have welcomed both a new CEO, Michelle Mahachek, and a newly hired Deputy CEO, Angela Ramsey. And we're very excited to see their ideas for EGPL come to life. 2019 will continue to be a time of transition for EGPL as we develop a new strategic plan, work with new library senior leadership, and a new town council. But we look forward to continuing to offer our traditional services and programs, like children's story times, reading buddies, and Lego workshops, but how we can also best serve the growing community for what is needed in the future. I'm sure you all have your own childhood memories of your local library, taking your children to programs, finding your favorite books to read, or perhaps the first card in your wallet was a library card. It takes a library to raise a child, and we're proud of EG's continued support of our library. Monica is going to speak with you and help work through our budget submission, so any questions, then she'll be able to help you with. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Diana. Good morning, Madam Mayor and councillors. On behalf of the East Gwillimbury Public Library, I am pleased to present an overview of library services and our 2019 operating budget. We at the library help build a health and active community by offering tools and resources that foster learning, discovery, and that spark curiosity. Our shared community resources, books, GoPros, Chromebooks, internet hotspots, and virtual access to digital downloading and streaming services provides free access to these learning tools, and it positions us as a sustainable organization in the community, whereby our community members can access these resources for free instead of going out to purchase these items for themselves for one-time or occasional use. Library services have been evolving from transactional places to places where we experience things. And we have been investing our resources in digital literacy alongside traditional literacy and ensuring access to STEM tools. This stands for science, technology, engineering, and math, to ensure that all community members have the skills to participate in the digital economy and to ensure our youngest of community members are actively engaged with these critical learning skills. As the new CEO, I am immensely proud of the work that we've accomplished, and I'm excited for the future of library services in our community. Here at the library, we do have a lot of fun connecting with our community, and we are committed to spreading our love of lifelong learning. Last year, we visited schools, arenas, GO trains, homeless shelters and group homes, grocery stores, and even the OSPCA. We saw a 20% increase in programs offered and a 21% increase in attendance at our programs and outreach. Our membership grew by 18%, and we saw a 47% increase in our summer reading club. We have sustained and innovated our programs. As Diana mentioned, we assumed operations of South Lake Cinemania, a TIFF film circuit. We offered schools a menu of learning programs available through the library, such as coding classes and a now and then technology class that's offered in partnership with the Sharon Temple. We engaged with teens through the sewing of cat blankets, which were hand-delivered to the OSPCA, and these blankets were installed in the cages of cats to help reduce their anxiety. This is the anxiety of the cats. And we are committed to a customer-first focus. Through support by council, the library launched self-checkout, which is now available at both library locations. The Holland Landing service area was redesigned for more accessible transactions and opening up much-needed library floor space that's needed for multi-purpose use. And we made our virtual branch more accessible through the addition of online library cards where users can gain instant access to our 24/7 catalog. A fun fact, our top 3 items borrowed last year were not books. So as you can see, internet hotspots take the top spot, followed by Chromebooks, and then we have a British TV show. And then we do see a couple of books up there on our top 5. In 2018, we saw increases in several of our key areas. We had a 6% increase in library visits. Our program attendance increased by 21%. Our print material checkout increased by 9%. Our digital checkouts increased by 14%. And to date, we've seen close to 4,000 transactions through our self-checkout units. But perhaps our strongest key performance indicator is the efficiency in which we operate the library. As you can see, the cost to operate the library per resident is about $53, and the average cost of a hardcover book is $33. So the annual cost to operate the library per resident is less than if each resident went out and purchased 2 books by themselves. In 2019, the library has selected 3 key areas of focus. One is service improvement through technology in our virtual branch. We want to continue to collaborate with our community and explore new partnerships, and growth management and responsive service design. So moving into our 2019 operating budget, the way that I'll approach this, Madam Mayor, is I'll first present an overview of our operating budget, I'll take questions, and then I'll move into our 3 capital programs. As you can see on page 59 of your budget binder, the library is looking at a 5% increase over last year, with the key pressures being in the salary and benefits line, which are standard step increases in benefits. We do have an increase in our library materials line, which accounts for increases to our periodicals, inflation as well. And we also have a facility increase, which represents the town cost of providing space to the library. Are there any questions?
Are there questions of Monica? Councillor Crothers.
Thank you very much for the 2 presentations leading up to actually presenting the budget. I love the concept that we're moving from transactional to experiential, and I think that can't be overstated enough. The social element of the library, especially for people who are new to the community. That was my first into the community, to meet people as a new resident 25 years ago, was bringing my kids to the library, and those programs, I think it's so important from that aspect alone. And then you build from there with the STEM programs and that. The 5% increase in budget, I think, is very much in line with your presentation, where you showed a 6% increase in visits and a 21% increase in programs. So I think that the budget is very much in line. My question for staff is, did we get a number on the facilities cost that I brought up yesterday? It was different on this sheet as it was on our other sheet.
Mr. Marshall?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we are verifying the cost. We're pretty sure that we should be adjusting the cost to account for that extra $4,000, but
Okay.
we're just verifying to make sure that that's the case.
Okay, so it's $4,000 on this budget or the other budget, one of the,
Right.
okay. Thank you. And the other comment I just wanted to make was, I love how you're loaning out the Chromebooks and the hotspots and that, because one of the things we see in society is that the income differential, some kids are falling behind because their parents can afford technology, and other kids, their parents can't. So I love the role of the library and help leveling the playing field for our kids in that respect too. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? Not seeing any at this time.
Okay, so we will move into our capital programs. The library is requesting capital funding for 3 areas, which are on pages 80 to 82 of your binder. One of the key objectives of the library is service improvement through technology and digital initiatives, which would be supported in part by 2 capital funding requests. The first is our IT hardware replacement, which is on page 80 of your binder, and this is due to the scheduled replacement of our digital media lab to ensure that we are offering current and relevant technology to our community. The items that are currently in our digital media lab were purchased back in 2013, so they are scheduled for replacement.
Are there any questions on this item? Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not necessarily a question for Ms. Mahachek, but perhaps through staff. I'm still, again, challenged to assess these projects when we don't have a reserve schedule. So I don't know what the balance of the library reserve is and how much of a draw this would be. Do we have that information yet?
Mr. Marshall?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we should have a schedule available for you by the end of the morning.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, go ahead.
The library materials budget, which is on pages 81 of your budget binder, is a $30,000 request to fund our digital content. As you can see from the chart on the slide, we have seen substantial growth in our digital content. This amount is based on a council growth formula that was adapted for use last year in 2018.
Any questions on this item? Seeing none, we'll move along.
Okay. The library is also focusing on growth management and responsive service design. This year, the library board will be developing a new strategic plan. We will be developing a multilingual collection, which will dovetail with our recent English conversation circles, and the library will be working with the town in the completion of the design for the library and the Health and Active Living Plaza. We are also requesting capital funds in the amount of $70,000 for 2019 to improve the functionality and accessibility of the Mount Albert branch, which is on page 82 of your binder. This would be a 2-year phased project to create a more accessible space that is more user-friendly for seniors, for families, and for businesses. The main thrust of this project is to address the narrow aisles that are in the Mount Albert branch. They're currently only 35 inches in width, whereas in Holland Landing, we have 43 inches in width, and industry standards in libraries recommends a 42 minimum inch width.
Questions? Seeing none, go ahead.
The library is looking forward to continuing to offer our innovative programs and services to foster learning and discovery in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monica. Any general questions, anything that members of committee need verified or clarified? Councillor Crone first, and then Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to our guest. I appreciate the presentation. It was excellent. I think my colleague here, Councillor Carruthers, very rightly tapped onto the notion of you're providing experiential services now. That's where, in fact, customer-focused businesses are going. It's the transactional. There's no value to that. It's the experience that adds the real value. So I commend you on that. And the only thing I would say to you is find some more opportunities, avenues to get the word out. Your increase in 6% in usage is phenomenal. I think you've got plenty of opportunities. Heck, the amount you're asking for in budget is less than what my Netflix account is going up. And you folks offer Hoopla, which is. I used it over the holidays. I finished reading my book and I needed another book. I downloaded a book. It was awesome. But you've got movies, audience, you've got a few apps all in one in Hoopla. There's a tremendous value there to the residents of East Gwillimbury, and I think it's a hidden secret. So
thank you very much for those kind words.
I'm a big supporter.
Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As someone who has spent several years serving as both a community volunteer and as a council liaison to the board, I'm delighted to see that the work that we started, and I know that Councillor Morton was also heavily involved with setting the stage for creating that digital branch, for example. Again, I'm delighted to be back as liaison for this term of council. What I wanted to chat about a little bit, and whether or not it's this format or in a future report, would be to explore a little bit more about that digital branch. And you mentioned today that you have the ability to sign up for a library card online. And so you don't actually have to physically attend that community hub. And so I'm wondering if you have a sense of how many of your patrons are exclusively digital, and if so, if you've looked at the resources that are going to be needed to grow that, and understanding that that'll continue to be an important part of your library operation?
Yes, we have. We have looked at our exclusive digital users. So we had around 100 registrants for our online library cards, which is fantastic. And when we look at library cards that have 0 checkouts, that's about 1,000 for us. So that indicates that we do have people who are coming into the library, registering for a library card, and they are accessing our digital resources. And it is a growth area. We live in an Amazon world where we want something now, where we want it tomorrow, and we don't want to have to wait. So by providing these digital resources accessible 24/7 on our catalog, we can really accommodate the demand for these types of services in our community that are becoming expected.
Are there any other questions? With that, I would entertain a motion to receive. Councillor Roy DiClemente, all those in favor? Sorry, it will carry that then. See your hand up, Mr. Lamanna?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, to interrupt. Just,
We had
I
a,
think in keeping with Budget Committee's past resolutions for other departments, we have, and I'll put it on the screen for you, one resolution that speaks to the library board's operating budget, and that, again, that Budget Committee recommends endorse and approve in principle. So that'd be one resolution, and then we'll follow with the capital, Madam Mayor.
thank you. Councillor Roy DiClemente has moved both of those items. Any questions? No motions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So what we've been doing, just so you know that your budget just wasn't passed just now. When you go out and you're all excited, I just want to make it clear that we have received your presentation, we have asked our questions, we have the budget book here where it fits in with the rest of the town budget, and we are receiving each one of the presentations, and then we're going to go back through and deliberate on each one of them. So you're halfway there, but you can't go out and cheer quite yet. Okay, thank you for being here.
Through you, Madam Mayor, your next presentation is the Sharon Temple Historic Site and Museum.
Good morning, Mr. Pearson. How are you today?
I'm just fine. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm here for my weekly visit.
And we're happy to have you here today. We always have a history lesson as well.
This rather spectacular picture was taken by one of our staffers, Elizabeth Evans. She's our collection manager over there. She waited quite a while to get the sun right behind the temple the way she did there. She also sorts out my cell phone or my computer when I mess it up, so she's quite a talented young lady. We'll see if I can work this. Oh, yes. 2018 was a very busy year at the temple. We started the year with a young intern on the left there, seen working with some of our artifacts in our collection. We opened our year with our heritage celebration, then Pigs and Pints, Canada Day, and both events had historical reenactors portraying the 1837 rebellion. Next were summer camps, illumination, haunted Halloween, and the last picture to close out the season was the old-fashioned Christmas. So how did we do at these events? The largest audience ever for our gala. Pigs and Pints sold out. Over 800 for Canada Day. 4 sold-out weeks of summer camps. The illumination sold out. 750 for the haunted Halloween. And old-fashioned Christmas had 450 attending.
In 2017 or 2018, we added 14 new staffers. And the nice part about these girls, they just work for food. They became a significant attraction for us. Excuse me. They were followed on social media, and many people came to the site on several occasions throughout the year just to see how they were doing. Some people are lucky enough to have a significant building named after them, or a road, or a bridge, or a park. I get the James W. Pearson chicken coop. Tells you where I stand. We made several headlines in 2018 for our activities throughout the year. The story done locally about our seniors' garden was picked up nationally and was run in newspapers as far away as Edmonton, Alberta. We celebrated our 100th anniversary as a museum, and this was quite a milestone for us and was reported well beyond the boundaries of East Gwillimbury. And this, along with many other events of our own and those in conjunction with the town, have brought visitors to the site and to East Gwillimbury, not just from our local area, but from across Canada and internationally as well. As you can see, our visitorship has increased dramatically in the last 4 years. This is partly due to the gala, the work we did on the Doan House, a push on social media, and a great deal of outreach. It's like a snowball at the top of the hill. Start it rolling down, and it just gets bigger and bigger. The more visitors we attract to the site, the greater the financial impact is on businesses in East Gwillimbury. The Ministry of Tourism and Culture measures visitors to an area in terms of economic impact. And in 2018, the impact of the temple, according to their figures, would have been $2,597,497. So where did your funds go last year? Canada Day, we had the second largest crowd for this event, and probably would have had the largest crowd had it not been for it was 120 degrees in the shade. If any of you were there will remember. The museum, we were able to increase our summer staff to help with record keeping of our approximately 8,000 artifacts. We improved our website to be more user-friendly and interactive. Our gift shop was expanded, and that quadrupled our sales for 2018. Outreach. We were asked to create and display our second exhibit at Queen's Park, worked with the library on several occasions, plus a small exhibit at the Holland Landing Library, and we are currently working on another one to go into the library. We also attended many town events. The last one, capital repairs. A new roof on the Temperance Hall with a 50-year warranty. And we also completed the repairs to the windows on the third floor of the temple. How do we leverage your money? We've received funds from the town for Canada Day, and that allowed us to get an additional $1,250, as well as for Canada Day, as well as $6,000 for renovation to the exhibit building from Canadian Heritage. because we're a funded museum, we receive a museum grant from the Ontario government. From Parks Canada, it was $16,339 to repair the windows. That was 50%. We raised some, and some of the town's funding was in that. South Lake donated half the money towards the horses and the wagon for Old Fashioned Christmas, and the town donated the other half. Thank you for that. We made a deal with Metroland Media for $6,500 worth of free advertising. We applied for and received $5,000 from the town's Youth and Community Initiatives Fund, which we turned right around and leveraged with the TD Bank for another $500. Sorry, 5,000. Thank you. And now we're after another 10,000 from another granting agency to be used to build an outdoor classroom for our education programs and also a rest area for our seniors when they're working on the gardens. Possibly a place for me to hang out when Lori's looking for me. Listed here are some of the local groups that are using the site either for their own or joint activities with the temple. Most of these groups have partnership agreements with us, or they supply us with services in kind. So now we get to the nitty-gritty. How can you help us in 2019? Our museum operations. This money will be used much as it was in the past as seed money for larger projects. In 2019, we'll be starting work on a major exhibit for 2020 that will be partly a traveling exhibit and will involve several other museums, including the City of Toronto. Will also be used for changing and improving our current exhibit, which has another year to run. I'll come back to the Heritage Advisory in a minute. Outreach. We have become a victim of our own success. We are asked to do more and more outside of the site, and also with Haunted Halloween, because of the crowds, it has started to cost us some dollars in time and material. As well, money for advertising comes in here. We have an arrangement with Metroland Media that for every dollar we spend on advertising, we receive $1.65 worth of free advertising. Canada Day, this is just a small increase over what we have received in the past from the town, simply because costs of rental for equipment and supplies keeps going up, and we keep adding more as it gets to be a bigger and bigger event. Heritage Advisory. Many municipalities have a person in this position. In fact, a few years ago, East Gwillimbury did have someone working and doing this valuable job. We are not interested in being part of managing the town's list of heritage properties, nor do we wish to advise the town on heritage matters. We do research for the town and citizens of East Gwillimbury. We at the Temple are probably in the best position to do this work on behalf of the town. We have the resources and the people to provide this service. In the past year, we provided research to the town and the region on the history of 2nd Street for the opening of that road, reopening, I guess it was, as well as the history of several villages and hamlets within the town. And in fact, just yesterday, we had a request from the town to research a property in Queensville. Since we started keeping a record of this, the 1st of July of 2018, we have had between 20 and 25 requests for histories on properties and people from citizens of East Gwillimbury. These requests would have gone to the town offices had we not been there. We're not asking you to fully fund the position, just to compensate us for the work we are happy to do on behalf of the town. I wish to thank you for your kind attention and hope you will consider our request so that Temple can continue to provide the same services and programs to the community of East Gwillimbury as it has in the past. I'm done. If you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
And you're right on time, too.
I like to be punctual.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pearson. We always get a history lesson and learn a lot about our community, and I know I'm not the only one here that is very proud that we have Sharon Temple in our community, and we all brag about it on a regular basis. So we're very happy to support the initiatives. We will deliberate in a future time, whether it's today or Monday, and delve into your requests along with a lot of other requests that we have, and try to find some balance with all of them, ever keeping in mind the taxpayer. So thank you.
I happen to be one of them.
Yes, you are, and I think some of your staff are as well. So I thank you very much. You've done an amazing job leveraging the money that the town was able to supply to you last year, and that speaks volumes, that one slide on how you leveraged a small amount into much greater amount, and touched a lot of areas that were needed to be touched at the temple. Certain areas that were small and starting to grow, and it showed this year that it was a very, very busy place. So congratulations, and please pass that along on behalf of council to all of your board of directors. I know they all roll up their sleeves and work, and it shows.
Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It's so informative, and when you were here last week as well. And echoing what the mayor says, we are all so proud to have the temple here, and I think we all value the need to keep it in pristine condition and not let it get run down. As a new councillor, I was surprised when I saw this as a budget item. I was under the impression that the temple ran on a cost recovery basis through fees and grants. So it would be very informative to me if you could share with council your budget from last year and what your actuals were, so we can get an idea of where money's coming from, where money's going to, and it helps us understand what the money we're giving is going towards. So if that could be shared with council, I think that would be very informative. Thank you very much.
Our operating budget last year was $300,000. Our income exceeded that by about $20,000, I believe, but our expenses exceeded that part too. We also have a capital budget, but we rely entirely on grants for capital works because they are big ticket items. I don't know whether I mentioned last week when I was here, the old Queen over there needs about $350,000 worth of work, which we will get done. She's not going to fall down or anything, but we will get done. We have lost a significant amount of funding in the last 2 years. We had a Trillium grant that was paying us $38,000 a year, which expired at the end of 2017. We covered that. We ended up our 2018 year pretty well right on with a balance. And we also were receiving a $50,000 grant from the developers, the Sharon landowners, and that expired in 2018. And that's what we're fighting right now. We have been able to absorb part of it. We still have a ways to go.
Thank you. If you could share that with us, the actual physical budget, so we can take a look at it, that'd be wonderful. Thank you so much.
We can do that.
Thanks.
Mr. Pearson, I recall a couple of years ago talking about the fact that nationally the temple is a National Historic Site, and yet there was no funding from the federal government. Is that still the case?
There's no stable funding. We did receive, as I mentioned in there, 16,000 something from Parks Canada, which is federal funding. But that is really only for capital projects. There's nothing for operating.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Councillor Morton, Councillor Crone. We'll keep on going. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Your presentation, Jim, was really, really good, and I always, much the same as the mayor and the rest of council, enjoy listening to you, because you always add a little flair to it. I have attended many events at the temple and have really, really enjoyed them. And I have had the opportunity as well of taking my granddaughters through there, and they get quite excited because they can't believe that you know, people used outhouses, and they can't believe I used them. So, but also I would be pleased to come over and meet your new employees at some point, and I hope that they are with the temple for quite a while, and that you are working very well with them. And congratulations on the naming of your new home.
They're vacationing in the Bahamas for the winter, but they will be back for opening.
How many are there?
14.
14. Will there be more next year?
Probably not. The facility is built for 14.
Thank you. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you, Mr. Pearson. Thank you for an excellent presentation. Gave me a few chuckles. I appreciate that. And on the topic of your 14 staff, you know, things don't work out with them. I'm sure KFC would be an excellent outplacement. Oh, that's what we're going to, okay. The one thing I always like to encourage with folks receiving funding from the town, I would encourage you to, as much as possible, when you're spending it, you know, on, you talked about Halloween, Haunted Halloween that you were doing, you need to buy more materials for it. I would just encourage you to try and source as much as you can within our town, so that the money that we invest in you also has a positive spin-off effect to neighboring businesses. But anyway, well done, and congratulations on the success of building the foot traffic that you're having. I think that's excellent. The challenge when you're successful is always to try and top it the next year and keep going. So I wish you well in that endeavor. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Roy DiClemente. You're good. I'm not seeing any other questions. Councillor Roy DiClemente. Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you the next time. As with the last group that were here, we are going to pass a motion to receive and, in principle, your budget. So it's not complete yet, but we're well on our way now. Just so you don't go out into the community and say, we got it.
You don't want to read about it in the paper.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. So we'll just put the motion up on the
Madam Mayor, I think at this point, given that this is an outside organization, I think it might be appropriate to simply receive the presentation and move forward from there.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. And you'll be moving that? Thank you. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, your next presentation is East Gwillimbury Chamber of Commerce.
Welcome. Good to have you with us this morning.
Thank
You're
you.
wearing two hats today.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. I was confused. I didn't see you
Yeah,
take
no, I
one
know.
off
We did a
and put
switch
the
up
other
this
one
year.
on.
We just always want to keep you on your toes.
Very good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, councilors, and staff. My name is Lori Woodyat. I am the chairperson of the Tourism Committee, which is part of the Chamber of Commerce. Mayor Haxon, councilors Roy DiClemente and Persicini, I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a few minutes because I'd like to educate the new council members on sort of the Tourism Committee, where we came from and where we plan on going. In 2014, a study was commissioned by the towns of East Gwillimbury, Georgina, South Lake Futures, and Central Counties Tourism, which is the regional tourism organization for the province of Ontario, which encompasses York, Durham, and Headwaters. The study, completed by Brain Trust Marketing and Communications, was released in May 2015, at which time it was endorsed by council and who instructed the chamber to strike a committee for the implementation of this plan. Somehow or another, not really sure how, I became the chairperson of this committee, and we put together a strong group. This shows our current committee, who throughout the last 3 years, we have met on a regular basis, at least quarterly, but often monthly or even weekly. I would like to acknowledge those individuals who have been with us since the beginning. Bob Karakides from Digital Hero, Amy Artinian, who represents the town of East Gwillimbury, Jean Carlo from Vince's, Craig Evans from Pheasant Run, Craig Thompson, Queensville Farm Supply, Julie Powers from the Franklin Club, and Christine Dawson, who is now working for the Chamber as our tourism coordinator and manager, however, at the time was working for the TD Bank. The reason I want to acknowledge these people is that there is a lot of time and effort. We have spent, probably as a collective group, hundreds if not thousands of hours trying to further this plan and increase tourism to our town. Our first order of business back in 2015 was to decide on a mission and vision and priorities that we would like to complete. Strategically, our objective was to create a tourism culture and identity in our town. The committee set out to create experiences for our community members and visitors, provide value to our tourism stakeholders, and engage tourism partners within the GTA and beyond. We soon realized that East Gwillimbury had many things to offer the community and visitors that they were often not aware of. So we decided to create an identity with a logo and website to showcase our tourism assets. We obtained grants from Central Counties Tourism and South Lake Futures to fund this initiative. In the summer of 2016, we launched our Experience EG logo and website. During the website design process, we reached out to our tourism stakeholders, some of whom didn't realize they were in the tourism business. We did this by visiting every tourism business in the town and hosting a tourism summit with the town of Georgina at the Rock, in which Mayor Haxon attended in May of 2016, to educate, inform, and share opportunities that are available in the tourism sector. We also recently hosted a business-to-business tourism marketing session for York Region in November in the Temperance Hall. A great example of the partnerships we have formed is our work with Ontario by Bike. The committee had representation at workshops and it's instrumental in assisting the creation of the York Century Bike Trail. Bicycle tourism is a large growth sector and an area that we hope to devote further energies in the future. Shortly after the committee started meeting, it was decided that we needed to create a signature event, hence our 50-kilometer self-guided Farm to Fork tour was born. As you are all aware, EG has a rich heritage in agriculture, and with it, its many green spaces that contribute to a unique quality of rural life. Our tour is the way to share this experience with the GTA so tourists can enjoy visiting our town and take advantage of its many bounties, especially around Thanksgiving. Is my video teed up? I have a video that was shot shortly, it's a little dated, after our during our 2016 tour that I'd just like to show to council.
Through you, Madam Mayor, let me find that. I don't see that on the desktop.
I have it on a stick if you need it. Be the last one. No problem. So in addition to showcasing our amazing farm assets, right at the bottom. Oh, no, sorry, go up. Up. No, down, there.
Well done.
Thank you. Like I said, it's a little dated. I think it's probably time for a new video to be shot. Thank you. In addition to showcasing our amazing farm assets, the idea behind the tour was to provide a means to educate the community and visitors that Thanksgiving is not just about a day off school or work or a turkey dinner picked up from a grocery store. We have accomplished this by providing educational components at each stop on the tour, as well as in our annual guide, which each participant receives. As a tourism committee, we remain focused on the objective of bringing visitors from outside of our borders to EG. The Farm to Fork Tour has helped us to attain this objective. Since 2016, we've had close to 600 participants, and according to the Ontario Tourism Regional Economic Model, or TREM, had an economic impact of close to $100,000 on the community. This does not include tour attendees that learn that the farms that they visit and many others in EG are open year-round, selling their products. I want to share a story. I, for this year, got to attend the tour for the first time. I was actually wearing my third hat, called into action, and I went around visiting. I was at AE Breeding Farm, or AE Natural Meats, and witnessed a little boy who was about 5 years old crying because he didn't want to leave. He was so excited about petting Cassidy the cow. And I was at Thompson Potato Farm, and BJ Thompson was like, no, I can't talk to you. There was just lineups and people and crowds, and I went to Rose Family Farm and heard two millennials from the city that were doing the tour saying, these are the best French fries I've ever had. And finally, Really touching story. I was at Queensville Farm Store near the end of the day, and I came across a family of 4 in a late model, expensive SUV that was just packed to the rafters. There was just, I didn't know how they were going to get anything more in this car after completing the tour. And the little girl, who was about 12 years old, was standing out while her dad was packing the things in the car. And I said to her, I said, oh, you've got your the kids are given a passport that they get stamped, and they were able to enter it into a draw to win an iTunes card. And I said, you need to go in. This is the last stop. You have to hand in your card. And she turned to me and she said, she goes, you know, this is one of the best days I've had in a long time. So she goes, I'm not going to hand it in. I want to keep it in my scrapbook. So her father engaged in a conversation with me, and he was not from our area, and he was had brought his family for the first time on the tour. And he said to me, he said, you know, who knew that within a half an hour of my home, I could actually shop at the farms? He goes, I go to the butcher and I try to buy healthy, and I go and try to buy organic produce. He goes, but I never knew that this was available. And he goes, and I'm going to return time and time again, and I didn't realize that you could pick strawberries at Rose Family Farm. So the impact that this has on our community, I think, is really important. I just wanted to share that with you. The tour has been successful. In 2017, we were honored by Central County's Tourism for the Farm to Fork Tour with an award given annually to one festival, event, or tourism operator in York Region. Many say that the best ideas are borrowed, so EG should be proud, as Uxbridge has created a farm to train event, and Georgina has created a field to table, both modeled after our Farm to Fork. The committee's final objective in the last 3-year plan was to repurpose the chamber signs. On the left-hand side of the screen, I'm sure you've all seen them. We have 5 of them standing, but 7 actual footprints among town. And the picture on the right is what you will see shortly at the Young Street sign just south of Green Lane. We have started selling the spots in December, and we have approximately 30 sold in a 1-year contract. Okay. So, over the last 3 years, we have worked very hard to strategically leverage the town's funds, obtaining $49,000 in additional funding from various other levels of government. So what does 2019 hold for the Tourism Committee? We have a big ask because we have big plans. We'd like to do continuation of the signage project. We have 2 signs that are lying on the ground or have disappeared. One of them was originally on Woodbine at Bales Road that snowplow took out, and we have one that is actually going to turn out to be a very valuable sign that was taken down to create the on-ramp coming south on the 404. And York Region has approved that we can replace both of these signs, and we will be working towards that very shortly. We are always looking to increase our reach to new audiences and add value to experience EG tourism. We are looking for new ways to support our tourism operators and drive customers to them. We are going to enhance the Farm to Fork tour this year, which will be held on October 5th. New initiatives that the committee is working on include a self-guided historical tour, which will feature 17 places of historical significance throughout East Gwillimbury. Our plan is to create a brochure with printed map as a general guide, and in addition to QR code each location to provide additional information when people are on site during the tour. Sports tourism and culinary tourism are 2 of the province's strategic focuses in 2019. Obviously, Farm to Fork is well aligned within the culinary tourism sector. In 2019, in addition to enhancements on the tour, we plan to create a pre-tour event envisioned as a Farm to Fork dinner, which will feature a chef-prepared meal with EG farm fresh ingredients. With respect to sports tourism, the Chamber is in the process of creating a consumer-driven website titled Shop EG. and it is the committee's intent to ensure that organizations such as local hockey, soccer, and baseball, as well as the various equestrian facilities, obtain information on this new website, which they can pass along to visitors that are coming into town to attend tournaments and or events that are at their sites, to assist visitors in the community who are attending our community. Our goal is to keep as many tourism dollars generated from these visitors within the borders of EG. In addition to the ongoing development and maintenance of our website, the chamber offices are moving across the street in the end of February, and it's going to require us to purchase some new signage, and we would like to obtain outdoor tourism racking, so that when we're not open, people to the community or visitors to the community have a place to stop and pick up things like our brochure on the self-guided historical tours. Finally, as a committee, we have participated in various local events over the years, such as Mount Albert Sports Day, Farmers Market, and the town's open house to promote Experience EG. However, we have yet to travel to other areas in the GTA. This year, we would like to take the show on the road, so to speak, to promote EG events and tourism assets throughout the GTA. To do so, we will require a tourism pop-up tent or display unit. We would like to thank the town for its past support and consideration of our 2018 budget, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Lori. Come a very long way in a very short period of time. It's
We
quite
aim to please.
remarkable to have a look at that video and to have a list of the kind of accomplishments that you have in such a short period of time. It's quite refreshing. Are there questions of Lori at this time? Councillor Foster.
Just a quick comment on the advertising on the signs that you spoke of. I'm surprised that that's not full. It seems like
We
good
started in
advertising.
December.
So, but again, so how are you contacting East Gwillimbury businesses outside the chamber?
Well, maybe I can ask Christine to answer that question.
We formed two.
There were two lists gathered, one primarily focusing on businesses that supported tourism, and a secondary were more service orientated. So it was a matter of, this sort of happened in December with the timing and holiday season. People have to get their artwork in and get approvals and things like that. Our options on the signs, they're either a 6-month because of some seasonal business like the Rail Yard, Wake Park, and some golf clubs. And so they have the option of 6 months or 12 months. So we are in the process of reaching out, and people have to get back to us. So the follow-up is going to be key on this. But at the same time, people sort of want to see it up, and then they sort of decide, oh, that looks great, and it sort of will spark a lot more interest in the community. But it definitely looks a lot better than the old ones. Thank you.
Any other questions? That's a sign of a good presentation. Councillor Ridley-Cometti.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarification, either to Ms. Woodjet or to staff. So the request this year is for $15,000. We don't have any ongoing sustainable funding for this initiative. This is an annual ask that we get every year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I know we've funded initiatives in the past. That's how we got some of these initiatives off the ground. Either now or at some point while we're deliberating, it would be helpful to have an understanding of that history of that support.
I can tell you, it was, you funded $7,500 in 2016 and $8,500 in 2017 and 18. So for a total of $24,500 to date.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a motion now, moved by Councillor Persicini. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, do we have I have no other presentations on my agenda at this time. Mr. Clerk, is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Mayor, and just for your assistance there, I'll put my minutes up. So the next natural step is just the continuation of yesterday's discussions and picking up the capital programs for CPRC, which I believe are fairly extensive. So there may be a pause right now for staff to refill their coffee cups if it so pleases council.
Thank you. Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we'd be well advised at this point. There's been several members of council that have mentioned it's difficult to deal with some of the decisions on capital without the reserve balances, and we wholeheartedly support that. So if we could take a 30-minute recess, we're just putting the final touches on a draft reserve continuity statement the Treasurer has advised. And importantly, we do a job as well. This has our new capital in it, and we do have some capital carry forward, and we'd like to have that available for council because we've spent some time over the last couple of years with the council terms on making sure that those are accurate, that we're actually getting the projects complete. If we're not moving up projects, maybe we should not move forward. So I'd like to give our team a little opportunity here to maybe put together both of those documents and get them here in draft form, and we could always perfect them for Monday if need be, but I think it's important to get them as part of the discussion.
I think that makes perfect sense at this point. I was going to suggest a break, so if you're suggesting a break for half an hour, I'm sure people can fill that time with something else while we're here. And so I would suggest we would be back at 11 o'clock, and then maybe our lunch break would be slightly later at that time. So with that, we'll take a recess and be back at 11 o'clock.
Review session now.
Okay, very good.
The continuation of the capital review session.
Okay, Mr. Marshall, and we're ready to go. We are back at our budget deliberations at just after 11 o'clock this morning.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we left off with the Community Parks, Recreation and Culture capital budget. It's on, the summary is on page 70, and there is a revised schedule in your addendum package. So I'll leave it to General Manager Karmazin to step through some of the capital projects.
Thank you, Warren. Through you, Madam Mayor and members of council. If it's okay, I'll run through the capital items being requested in order. I will point out that project 023, 24, 25, and 26, and 27. Those are being represented under the CIES budget, as those are fleet replacement vehicles and equipment. They're not new equipment being requested due to growth. So the first project, 19022, is a two zero-turn mowers as well as line trim equipment to perform cut and trim to our growth due to our parks. That was the 44 acres of parks and open space coming on board last year, and the third grass crew being brought on board to provide adequate equipment for that grass crew. I can go through all the projects or answer any questions if you'd like. It's up to council. Madam Mayor, would you like to go through all the projects first and then have questions, or did you want to take questions per project?
What's your pleasure, members of committee? Do you want to go through them and then ask the questions as opposed to individually?
I think so.
I'm seeing that might be the route to go.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll continue. Project 19028, Grant Park Playground replacement, Grant Park off Mill Lane, Queensville, the park has reached the end of its life. Just a point of note that we operate all of our parks at the CSA standard, so all of our parks are designed, installed, and then once installed, inspected on a routine basis at CSA standard. And we do have a life cycle replacement for those parks once they reach the 15 to 20 year mark based on the standards and whether they are meeting the standards required. Emily Park Playground replacement and new trail development. Emily Park, the park out in Holland Landing has reached its end of life as well, and is in our replacement program. We are also proposing an expansion of the trail route to link in to the Colony Trail route for a trailhead at that location, and that location is also adjacent to an older adults home off Oak Ridge. So we would seek to perhaps have some outdoor amenities as well for older adults at that location as well. So that's why you're seeing a little bit of a higher price tag than your typical park replacement, because we are looking at expansion of with the trail connection and as well some other amenities for some older adults and families. It should be noted that the expansion portion is development charge eligible. The replacement of the playground would be general Parks Reserve or general reserve. Main Prize Park playground replacement in Mount Albert, adjacent to off Main Prize, adjacent to the Ross Family Complex. That playground is up for replacement as a part of our playground replacement program, funded through general reserves. The Holland Landing splash pad surface and servicing repairs, we are proposing, after further meetings with staff in winterizing that particular splash pad, we are proposing that we defer that project to possibly 2020, subject to further investigation of some settlement that we've seen with that structure, with the concrete base there. We just want to ensure there isn't additional issues with some sub-base mechanical systems, being the water lines, the water drainage system. So I think we would like to park that project for now, and if there are any remediation that's required, we can certainly take that upon within the existing operating budget that may be required for 2019, but I think we'd like to park that for now to perform some more investigation work on that project. Project 19032 is to ensure asset integrity and safety with our existing playgrounds and sports fields. We're recommending some topping up of playground servicing, some wear mats at swing sets throughout town, some improvements to some baseball netting and repairs of repairs to baseball netting as well with that project. Project 19003 is again a smaller project to simply keep up with safe access and egress over time with snow clearing and putting salt product and with abrasion over unit paver surfaces. We do see some pitting out of unit pavers, and we do sometimes see some shifting with unit pavers. So we're seeking to maintain safe access and egress to our facilities and do some remedial repairs at the facilities noted under that capital project. In particular, Mount Albert Lions Hall, the apron around that hall, and as well as the Temperance Hall just adjacent to this facility. And there's some Civic Center unit pavers as well that we're looking at. Project 034, Anchor Park sports field lighting. There was some good discussion this morning related to that project. There was also some, from what I thought, some very good questions From staff's perspective in working with our stakeholders, this project is very much an investment back into soccer, baseball, and it's not only an investment back into the youth, young adults and adults. Any time that we create in the evening hours also frees up some time for our children and that play soccer and baseball as well. So it's important that there is an offset, that any time that we can offer to youth and adults that might be occupying time for children's soccer, baseball, there is that direct offset as well. And we do collect development charges for these types of projects to expand and give us more program and permit hours under these lights. As well, these are our premier facilities. The bases for these facilities are engineered bases, and they are very much our premier fields in town, and a very good investment for those users. The next projects, 035 and 036, are both park redevelopment and revitalization projects. There was previously reports in January presented to council related to these projects. They're both enhancement and expansion projects. To update two of our existing community parks, we've identified community parks in each community that we would like to update over time, and we are collecting development charges to direct towards these projects. These are parks that are shared community facilities, not just neighborhood parks, a little bit larger in scale. And those two projects, we've performed significant design work. We're now seeking to move forward with those into the procurement and construction phases. Excuse me. Project 037 is the continuation in our last year of our Emerald Ash Borer strategy. So this invasive species emerged approximately 5 years ago, and staff has undertaken working with our residents and replacing our street tree inventory of over 500 street trees. And we're down to our last removal and replacement for our last set of street trees under that program. Many other communities have struggled with this program and have had dedicated tax rate increases to tackle this program and to maintain their tree canopy. Project 038 is an update to the mapping as well as the status. It's a check-in with the Active Transportation and Trails Master Plan, given we have had a significant amount of activity with constructing new trails and adding on to our trail system. We want to check and balance as far as how we're doing with our Active Transportation and Trails Master Plan, and as well an update and some improved mapping to show our trails where they sit today, and also where we're heading as far as the medium and long-term strategies under that program. And the last project for under the Parks branch is a vehicle that's required for parks operations, in particular for horticulture, which would add on some capacity to maintain our existing and expanded grouping of annual and perennial beds, shrubs, as well as I should add that our horticultural staff is also licensed qualified arborist staff as well, and so they will perform arborist work or tree trimming, limbing, bucking, those types of tree work that may be required. Any of the high angle work is often contracted out to those service providers that have that equipment, but that's an added benefit to the town to perform that work in-house. So that's a vehicle, again, growth related, adding on additional beds and additional street trees under that program. Moving into the facilities branch, we have some accessibility ramp repairs, and this is just an update to the accessibility ramps at Mount Albert Community Center and River Drive Park Community Center. And so that would be some welding work and some replacement work to the timber structures at those locations. The Civic Center and Temperance Hall site improvements, we are seeing some deterioration of the asphalt structures at this facility, as well as next door at the Temperance Hall, and we're recommending that we do a remediation of some of the base in at those lots, and then a repaving of those lots as well. The Civic Center high definition security camera. So this is a security and loss prevention system that we have here at the Civic Center. We're proposing updating an obsolete and outdated system that is becoming very difficult and challenging to maintain. And this would lead to enhanced security and safety and loss prevention here at the Civic Center. Project 4.3, the North Union furnace conversion, is a conversion from oil to a higher efficiency propane. So this is not just a removal and a replacement of the furnace. It also involves the distribution of the propane. So a large-scale propane tank, they call them submarine tanks, which typically sit outside the premises, feed lines into the facility, and we're also proposing higher efficiency radiant on-demand hot water system for that facility as well. So you're not storing hot water over long periods of time between rentals. It would be more of a higher efficiency on-demand heating system for the water as well as that location. And the last project, 044, is the Ross Family Complex painting and washroom replacement. In particular, it's not the washroom partitions per se, it's more of the fixtures. We are noticing deterioration to the plumbing fixtures at that location. The updated plumbing fixtures are typically low flow hands-free, so we do expect to have some water savings from the replacement of these fixtures, but we are seeing some deterioration of those fixtures, and we are proposing updating those fixtures with some modern technology moving forward. So that's our listing of capital requests. I'd be happy to answer any questions moving forward.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there's questions. Just let's see. Start with Councillor Foster.
Through you, Madam Mayor, a question on the security cameras here at the Civic Center. Mr. Valchich and I talked about this, but I can't remember what we come up with. Those security cameras are still working, but I'm presuming they're not supported at this time. Is that the reason for replacement?
Through you, Madam Mayor, absolutely, the cameras are fully operational. We just have noted that there is not the image quality is I won't say poor. It's not as good as it could be. And as well, we are working with our security services provider. They are finding it more and more difficult to source out parts, and they have indicated that to us, and which is good to know, obviously, because it is a critical building system.
Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. There's a lot of projects here, so I have a number of questions, if you can bear with me. Being new to this process, I'm trying to understand some of the lines. So when you say community contribution, what is that? What does that mean?
Madam Mayor, through you, when we collect development charges, when building permits are issued, there's actually two components that we collect. One is the development charges in accordance with the Development Charges Act, and then there's an additional contribution that we collect at that time called community capital contribution, and it provides a number of different components. Perhaps what I would recommend is when we go through the growth management workshop in February, we can provide a little bit more of an overview of what drives our development charges and then that supplementary piece of community capital contribution. So there are additional funds that are available, and in this budget, as they're being proposed, my suggestion would be that they're being appropriately used.
Okay, so it's not coming from the community, it's coming from the developers. Okay, and then when you say construction, I'm sort of surprised because I would think that the biggest cost of a playground would be the materials. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around how things are shown on here, because labor costs, I assume, would be borne by staff unless we're hiring someone separate. But why is this being shown as $200 in construction and not shown as materials? Or the Grant Park is $90,000 construction, no materials.
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically when we do parks reconstruction projects or playground replacements, it is primarily, the lion's share is, the majority is equipment. But we do depend on the licensed installer to dig the footings, pour the footings, or drive the footings, and then as well install the equipment. So it is typically under one contract for construction, and that's why it is represented as a construction line. But typically our park staff will not perform the construction because for purposes of consistency for warranty, you want to ensure the licensed supplier and installer is installing the park's playground equipment, and then as well you want to maintain that consistent install into your warranty period, which is typically 1 year after the install of the equipment.
So that makes sense to me, that if it's just materials, then it would be under materials, but once materials and installation, you're calling it construction. So that would be the same with the pavers. We're not having someone from the town fix those pavers. We're actually hiring someone to repair all those pavers. Is that correct? I'm just trying to understand it. I have no problem with doing it. I'm just trying to understand how it's all
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct.
Okay. And now the Anchor Park lighting, well, I'm very much in favor of it. I'm shocked at how much it costs considering we already have the electricity to the site. The $437,000, can you provide a little bit of a breakdown of what that is? It's an awful lot of money for lights. The number of lights, is it per light standard with an overall sort of project management piece on top of that? Can we get a bit of a breakdown on that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so we do have lighting, the light source, the electrical connection in the park. And so from that electrical connection feeding out to the park, so there's a bunker where a number of distribution panels, very expensive distribution panels, would be installed. And those distribution panels will typically have some type of a timing device or lighting control with them as well. A lot of the lighting control nowadays is done wirelessly or is IP addressable. So that's an added expense. And then the wiring is higher gauge copper, which is very expensive, which is buried and typically directional board. So that goes underground, so we're not disturbing the base, the sod, the irrigation systems that are at both sports fields. And then we have the cost for the concrete poles that will be provided at each of the baseball diamond and the soccer pitch. and those are larger poles. Because it is a competition field, they do sit a bit higher. They can be anywhere between 30 to 40 feet in height. From there, the electrical connections feed into the LED light fixtures, and those fixtures, as indicated, do come at a cost and are an attractive technology to have in that they are directional, and then they will save on hydro consumption considerably, but those fixtures do come at a premium. So walking through those components of the project, I do remind council it is 2 sports fields, and that is in keeping with the costing that we're seeing nowadays with sports field illumination.
Thank you. And what would the lifespan of that be? When would this be coming back to us for replacement or upgrading?
Through you, Madam Mayor, at minimum, the fixtures are 25 plus years. So LED lights are sealed fixtures, so there are no bulbs to replace. An LED light is a sealed unit, so once the light burns out, you would have to replace the entire fixture. The good thing is we would not have to replace the hydro feeds, the panels, and the poles. It would just be the fixture cost, so it would be a portion of the amount that we're asking for in this capital request.
Excellent. And did we look at lower cost options? Just wondering what those would be.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are lower cost options with what are called metal halide lights or high pressure sodium, and you will get higher wattages, so higher consumption, as well as a lot of ambient light or light migration. And next to a residential area, it is very common to receive feedback from residents and negative feedback in that all throughout the summer they have light spilling into their backyards, into their back windows, in some instances interference with their peaceful enjoyment of their property.
Thank you very much for walking me through the rationale on that. When it is this much money, we need to have the rationale so that we can explain it to residents. My last comment is on the 2 park redevelopments in Mount Albert and in Queensville, and it would be nice to have a park redevelopment in Holland Landing as well. I know we have the lighting on the field, which is used by the entire community, is the reason that we're putting that lighting in there. But these big park redevelopments, I would love to see one in Holland Landing as well. Thank you.
Who else might have? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to General Manager. I just have a comment on the North Union Hall furnace conversion. My comment is I think the estimate you have may be a little high. I just recently did the same thing in my own home and brought it in last. I appreciate it's better to have a little padding in there in case something goes wrong, but I would encourage you to make sure you source out multiple quotes on getting a price. I think you could probably do it. I think I did mine for substantially less. But the other thing, I think it's wise to convert from oil to propane. You're probably speaking as a guy that was 20 years in the insurance industry and now a recovering insurance guy. Consult with your insurance company, whoever looks after our insurance. We're probably being surcharged because we do have oil, so we should receive a slight reduction in our premiums as a result of switching over to propane. I think it's a good decision. That's all.
Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, it's a very quick question. Through you to Mr. Karmazin. You talked about the replacement of the rest of the emerald ash. Aaron, how many trees are remaining of the 500 that you said that we had to start with?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I do not have that exact figure, and I'm not sure if it is in the capital sheet, but I can certainly access that figure and get back to council with the exact figure of what's scheduled. I do know often what we've done is to minimize disruption to the property owner. Is often we remove the tree late in the fall, and we replace early in the spring, so they're not missing necessarily that tree when they're outdoors over the spring and summer months. But I can get back to council with the exact number.
And what's the average cost of the replacement trees? Approximately.
Through you, Madam Mayor, depending on the species of trees, it can be anywhere between $300 to $500, and that includes removal, stumping of the previous tree, depending on how large that tree was and how much work's involved with removing the stump, and then digging out and replacing with a new tree.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'll start with Anchor Park through you to Mr. Karmazin. I recall that when there were discussions about the scope of work that you had shared with me, that the original design of the park back in 2001 had included lighting. And is it possible that some of this increased expense is trying to retrofit, because we're working within a park rather than having it brand new construction, that some of the additional expenses is us going in and, again, the directional digging and that sort of thing, trying to work around that? Is that some of the expense as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. There will be additional expenses to work around existing infrastructure once it's in the ground. It's always more cost effective to build from the ground up, and in this case we don't have that option.
Thank you. The park structure replacement projects, Grant and Emily and Main Prize, I note in the images you've shared with us that the base of those play areas are sand and pea gravel, and that's not to our park standards now, which I believe is wood chip. Do these projects also include not just the structures but also the base area, or are we retaining the sand and pea gravel?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we would be replacing the base to bring the parks back or to our existing park standard.
Thank you. A couple more questions. Or a comment, actually. The Emily Park replacement, I wanted to, I'm happy with the structure of the fact that we're going to be doing this project. I wanted to share and perhaps bring to some attention our Active Transportation and Trails Advisory Committee had a really good, and Mr. Karmazin, your staff were in attendance, had a really good discussion with representatives from the Conservation Authority and even from regional transportation folks about some planning opportunities for that area. Emily Park is adjacent to, I believe it's a dry stormwater management pond, which creates some opportunities for looking at that piece of infrastructure. And there was even some talk about some bird watching opportunities and so on. So while this project is fine with me, I think that there's some opportunities there for some partnerships and perhaps some enhanced focus on this area. And so I would like to just draw that to your attention and make sure that we explore all options with that. The other question I had to do with the Holland Landing Community Center splash pad. As I recall, that was first installed in 2011, and I don't know if this is or it was at least redone, the park was redone. I'm just wondering, what's the lifespan for a splash pad? This seemed to have been a very short period of time before it's requiring some remedial work. And so I'm wondering if there's perhaps a warranty that needs to be addressed, or if this is just the natural lifespan of a splash pad.
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically we will see splash pads, their life cycle be anywhere between 20 and 25 years. This would be premature. I think part of the work that staff needs to undertake is to investigate further, to determine what is happening with the deflection or movement of the concrete pad in the areas identified. And then from there, take a look at past inspection reports to determine if there might be a warranty claim. In addition to that, determine what may be required moving forward as far as remediation, because it could be a case where there might be some settlement or some soft spots. It might not be the amount of remediation that's what was currently proposed in the initial request. So I think we need more time. We need more time to investigate further on what's happening with that splash pad, and then as well take a look back at our records from when we had that splash pad installed and inspected at that point in time.
Thank you very much. And just finally, Madam Mayor, if I may, on the Civic Center and Temperance Hall site improvements, so Project 041, is it the entire parking lot for Temperance Hall or simply the entryway? Because when I'm reading this, it's just the entryway. I want to clarify what the scope of work is, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it is the entire Temperance Hall parking lot that we're proposing, and I believe it was shown in a blue image on the context map.
Yes, thank you very much.
Councillor Persichini.
General Manager Carmerson, and through you, Madam Mayor, what does it actually cost? I might have been an oversight, didn't see it, to operate versus how much money we make. What's the total money we make per year, and what does it cost to operate? Just, or maybe our accountant people can answer that. What does it cost to operate this organization of the recreation center versus the what we make? What is the percentage that do we break even point, or that we lose money? How does it work? I just trying to figure this out. Mr. Melchuk maybe could answer that.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to suggest perhaps we put the operation budget back up for that area, and we can take a look at that,
so.
if that helps.
Yeah, I'm talking about what is actually, I know as a business person, if Persichini Fitness is $180,000 a year, but I got to make at least $250,000 to survive. So this is basically what I'm asking. How much does it cost to run this operational?
Madam Mayor, we'll just ask budget committee members just to turn to their budget book. I think it's page 37. My apologies, page 40.
I might have missed it, but I'm just curious.
47, not 37. And General Manager Karmazin will just give a little bit of a recap of what the overall expenditures and what those revenue sources are that helped offset that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, based on the 2019 budget request, we're sitting at approximately 5.2 million. And then based on projected revenue for next year, we're looking at 1.5 million in projected revenue, which is primarily from permitting your facilities and programs. I should remind council that typically the investment in parks, recreation, and culture is not a break-even business. I always remind people that if it was a break-even or a make-money business, the private sector would be in it a lot more than than municipalities. And when you build a park, for example, you're building a park for quality of life. And when you build a trail, you're building a trail for quality of life. We don't necessarily charge admission or registration to things like parks and trails. So there is some areas that are an investment back into the quality of life of the community and not necessarily a direct correlation to pricing and cost recovery.
Where I was going is to maybe some of the, we thinking about how we charge our service in the arenas and the rental of the halls and everything else, and somewhere along the line that, if we're going to increase it wisely, but we don't want to lose our customer base, but we do it in a slowly, gradually build into it. It's just like the tax, we were thinking of the taxes. If we don't, in 5-10 years from now, we're not going to have the development like we have today. So we need to put some money aside and build it slowly for those rainy days. That's where I was going for. That's why I asked the question. Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. Oh, go ahead.
Just a follow-up question on the Temperance Hall. Who owns the Temperance Hall? Because Jim was saying something about they paid for the roof on it, but now we're doing paving the parking lot and the interlock. Can you help me with that?
Mr. Webster.
The town owns the Temperance Hall and has a long outstanding lease term obligation with the temple. And I believe the lease either was just renewed or is currently, it's in the process of being renewed, and we will be bringing that forward to council, I believe, if we haven't. And if we already have, we'll bring it forward and let you know what kind of terms that lease contains.
Okay. So is it true that the Temperance Hall paid for the roof, but we're paying for the paving? That's part of the lease arrangement and that? Okay, thank you.
It's a partnership. I have a couple of questions regarding some items here. One is the Emily Park replacement, and Councillor Roy DiClemente has touched on that it is a dry site. We have adjacent to this facility a York Region Housing project, a 3-story seniors apartment building, and they use this on a regular basis when they have families come in, but they also are a very active group. They are an organized group, and they quite often have events in the park for themselves. There is no other park in the area at all, and I know why. The stormwater management pond was dry, and let's take advantage of it. It wasn't really a planned thing, and the region, of course, didn't kick in for anything at that time. So they are watching this very carefully. They knew that it was on the agenda for this year, and if I could ask that at some point there be a meeting with the residents there. There are about 60, I believe, who protect this in days when there's vandalism as well. They're the ones that make the calls and whatever. So I'm sure that they would like to have some input on the kind of things that they would like, and particularly some benches and picnic tables that they can use for meals outdoors. The next one would be the Anchor Park sports field. And I'm pleased to see it back. As I said earlier, I'm a fan of this going forward. It is a huge investment in a park, but we have invested in that park since 2001, and prior to that, it was not invested in at all. It's the major park in Holland Landing, and while we've got soccer and baseball, we have a picnic shelter, we have a huge playground equipment, and it is the main park outside of the area at the community center itself. So I'm hoping that we can move forward on this one and expect we won't see it back in any time soon. The investment, I suspect, will be 20 or 25 years in that. And it opens doors as well for other activities. While we're talking about soccer, there's other activities that can take place on that field if we can get this done. So that's my comments with that one. The quad cab 1 ton, what's the expected life cycle of that vehicle?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm just informed by CIS. They are responsible for our fleet program, and I've been informed 7 years is the life cycle.
Okay, and I know we push it if, in fact, the maintenance isn't significant. It's I guess in this day and age, it's not a significant purchase of a vehicle, but 110,000 seems to be a lot for a crew cab. So, I think that's all I have. Councilor Di Clemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before, I mean, perhaps as part of the follow-up materials for next week, as far as Emerald Ash Borer is concerned, I'm wondering if we could get, I know that was a multi-year plan. It was approved in first quarter of 2015. If we could get actual expenditures on that program. My understanding was that this last year was only supposed to cost us about $30,000. So I'm wondering if the previous year didn't cost us as much. So obviously it was just over $500,000 as a multi-year program. So I'm just wondering if that's still the same funding envelope and we've just broken it up differently, or if something has changed in the strategy. So before we address it, thank you.
Thank you. I did have one more. I apologize. 19031, the splash pad in Holland Landing. It's probably the most used of any of the splash pads, the 3 in Holland Landing. So I would hope that when we investigate, that it will be operable in some fashion. But if it's not or not operable, if we can certainly give lots of notice to the community, perhaps if there's actually going to be some construction done, that we keep in mind opening day. That is one that all of our young families in Holland Landing are very supportive of. Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Crothers.
Thank you so much. One more question on 19029, the Emily Park replacement and new trail development. Does this include that much talked about bridge that the community's been asking about? And if so, when would we expect the bridge to be open to connect to the library?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the trail connection does go through the Anchor Woods community to the bridge behind the Holland Landing Community Center. I should say informal footbridge that was installed that has washed out, and that is footbridge that is in LSRCA Raglands. We are working with the developer in Anchor Woods to facilitate the reconstruction of that bridge to include a properly engineered bridge to cross the creek. We are working with the developer and the authority, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, to implement that as early as the summer for operation into the fall 2019 is what we're tentatively scheduling at this point. So it is not a part of our capital repair and replacement program, given it connects into a new community. It connects an existing community into a new community. We have put the onus on the developer to replace that bridge. But I should note that that bridge crossing, in order to provide a proper engineered bridge crossing, does require LSRCA approval, and with that, some stringent design that is required, and a permit that's required through the LSRCA and submittals to the LSRCA, which staff is working on behind the scenes.
Thank you. Because both Councillor Foster and I have heard from residents on this bridge for quite a number of months, it'd be helpful if you could keep us in the loop on how that's going and what the expected date is when you have more details. Thank you.
Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. While it isn't addressing the bridge to the community center, it does address another popular bridge that gets discussed, which is often known as the Bridge to Nowhere, and that's the one that's off Stonehill. So that is also another piece of important infrastructure for our trail network to bring people up from the Gristmill Plaza and eventually get them towards the community center, whether it's on road or on a trail connection. So it is addressing another community need. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other questions. I think we have sufficient information from this portion, and now we were going to move on to another piece. Because we took a longer break, I'm going to suggest that we push on until 12:30 or 12:45, perhaps, to see if we can gain some momentum with our paperwork.
So, Madam Mayor, the next, sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Lamanna.
Through you, Madam Mayor, do you wish to review the resolution, proposed resolution for the CPRC capital projects, and then move that?
I'll move it.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I'm trying to reduce it so that council can see it on the screen. So from the discussions through GM Karmazin, I understand that 19023, 24, 25, 26, and 27 is being moved under the CIS budget. And then 19031, Hull Landing Splash Pad, is deferred to 2020. Okay.
Okay, I have a mover here.
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor. The just confirmation from Jim Velchich that the items from 023 to 0227 are not, they're already covered under CIS. They're just being deleted from this particular capital budget.
Thank you. Okay. Any questions on that? I have it moved by Councillor Persicini. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
So the last area that we would be able to look at under capital is the community infrastructure and environmental services, and General Manager Molinari will take us through the capital plan.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, we have a number of, some changes this year that have been implemented with regards to our fleet. And as we kind of alluded to in the previous conversation, CIS is taking responsibility for centralizing the fleet and looking after the maintenance of all the vehicles town-wide. And we've implemented this almost in all the departments now, with the exception of some fire service vehicles. Essentially what we're seeing is, I think what the benefit to the town is that we'll have a more streamlined approach whereby we'll have a single set of eyes through the CIS mechanics on our staff and externally, looking at these vehicles and determining whether we still have some service life left in them, and a much more consistent approach to be able to make sure that we're maximizing the life of these vehicles. So that's part of this, is the reason we had a bit of a duplicate this year. Is the first year we've actually centralized that in the CIS budget. So CIS budget, capital budget anyway, looks like it's a little longer than normal, and that is because we have a number of fleet replacements that are from other departments as well. So I can go through our capital budget, and I'll try to bundle some of these where we can, and in future budgets we may actually create a separate area just for the fleet so that it's a little easier to read as we go through. So I can take the first four capital projects, which would be 19045, 46, 47, and 48. Those are all the CPRC replacement vehicles. All those vehicles have been inspected by our mechanic, and in fact, every one of those vehicles is beyond its scheduled service repair. So we're confident in recommending replacement of all those vehicles at this time. So if there's any questions as we go through, happy to answer any of those. So we right now we're looking at 19045, 46, 47, and 48.
Any questions on those items? Seeing none, move along.
All right, project 19049 is our asphalt resurfacing project. This is an annual program. We're looking to shave and pave a number of roads within the town in Holland Landing, Sharon, and Mount Albert, including Walnut Avenue, Wright Drive, Leopard Crescent, Ward Avenue, and King Street. So this is, again, a project that gets funded from gas tax and some grant funding as well.
Any questions? Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Molinari. I drive those roads probably 50 times a day. I'm just wondering why you wouldn't extend it north of Princess Street around the bend by the bridge, only because probably every 1 or 2 months the guys are out there filling holes that have been eaten away, I guess, from the vehicles going through it. And they did one here not too long ago, but now there's another one just up the road from that. And I'm wondering if that area was looked at. I mean, I know it's midstream, but it's one that I think needs a lot of attention to it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's an area we could look at due to, we only have a certain amount of money for this account, so we try to spread those dollars as best we can. And if it's an area that we feel we can extend for a couple of years, or even by a year or two, then that's money that can be diverted into other roads that may benefit more from that works at the time. But certainly it's something that we can add to our list. We can inspect, we can have a look at it, and if it makes sense to do it, and if we can incorporate that into this year, we can do so. But generally, we try to balance this out so that we're doing the maximum amount of work with the dollars that we've got. Yep.
Would there be available reports that there was a number of potholes filled, or it's pavement, so it should be significant, documented, I would hope, that you could go back and see, are we further ahead at the end to move it out a little farther and cover, maybe it's a soils issue, or is it a matter of waiting and perhaps pushing it much further?
Through you, Madam Mayor, actually, we're going to be getting our first installment of our pavement management program this year. We've invested in that for the last couple of years, and we're to the point where we're going to get our first report from that document, and that document will help us much better plan our overall program. So as we get that document, we can review that in terms of these areas that we've identified as being issues, and put it all into a better capital program, one that we haven't been able to provide in that level of detail until this year.
This would come back to council at a later date when you're going to proceed?
Certainly, when we award the contract, we can advise council if there's any additions or subtractions at that time.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking in the description of work, Mr. Molinari. It says additional work within this contract includes road repair on the west end of Hillcrest. I'm just thinking about the development proposal that was put before us a couple of weeks ago. I know it's not been passed, but I'm just thinking about doing repairs where there's going to be a development that's going to make a mess of our new asphalt. I'm just hoping that that stuff gets thought of at the time.
Through you, Madam Mayor, certainly if that's an area where, through our development group, we understand if they're going to be putting lots of heavy traffic through there, then that might be something that we would defer this to. But I believe that they've looked at that, and it's okay to proceed with this. But at the time of when we come forward, we'll certainly make sure that we're not putting a road in place that's going to be in jeopardy.
Mr. Webster.
On that one, I believe there is a public meeting at our next on that, so we might be best at this point in time just to defer and note those comments and possibly reallocate the funding as the budget moves forward. But I respect what Mr. Molinari has said and his staff. There is some need, but certainly you don't want to do something and have throwaway costs involved.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, moving along. The next item is Capital Project 19050, which is our corporate asset management policy development and data integration. We have a couple of time constraints coming up, and in July 1, 2019, there's a requirement, legislative requirement, for us to have this policy, asset management policy, in place for the town. And as part of this work, we're also looking to complete the necessary work that's required for the July 1, 2021 timeframe as well, which is basically providing us with the asset management plan for our core municipal infrastructure, which would be our roads, water, and sewer. So this project is necessary in order to advance our asset management plan and provide the information as required for under the legislation.
Any questions? We'll move along.
Okay, Project 19051 is again another annual program. It's a double high float surface treatment, and what's great about this project is that with the completion of this project, we will have surface treated all of our gravel roads, so we will not have any more gravel roads at the end of this capital program, which is a really good news story.
That's a great news story. I remember when I first got on council, the discussion about how much more it cost to maintain a gravel road as it did a paved road. You had to make that investment to turn it into pavement, but ultimately now, better for our residents, safer for our residents, and I would think in time, I'm not saying we're going to save money, but we won't be putting money into a gravel road that it never is completely satisfying.
Yeah. Agreed. And actually, there's one additional benefit to that, and that is that we have a grader that we may be able to dispose of at a time when it makes sense to do so.
Questions? Not seeing any? Go ahead.
All right, the next project is 19052, which is the Elda Court easement drainage repairs. This project is to install some sub-drains in an easement at the rear of a property in Sharon for drainage improvements. And it's been on the books for a number of years, and we're recommending that this go forward in order to provide that drainage relief in that area.
Is it a breakdown from a drain or a long history issue?
It's an easement. If you look at the picture on page 153, it's actually just an easement at the back of some properties, which remains wet in the spring for long durations of time, and it's within an easement that the town is responsible for maintaining. So it's an item that is not critical, but it's one that really needs to be. Its time has come.
And if we don't do it this year, it'll be back for next year.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The funding source is noted as tax levy. Is this to be considered as, is it incorporated into our operating budget, or is this a sheet that needs to be updated? We don't, it seems unusual as a funding source.
This, through you, Madam Mayor, this, the cost of this is such that it's too much to be addressed through our operating budget, so that's why it came forward as a capital project, because of the amount of funding that's required.
And it's my understanding that we normally fund our capital program through reserves and not necessarily through tax levy, because this would impact the proposed tax levy increase that has been put before us.
Mr. Webster.
If I may, Madam Mayor, through you and through the council, I think it's a very good point. And one of the things we're looking at is stormwater is increasingly becoming an issue of expenditure, important expenditure, because you get right into source water protection ultimately with this. And at this point in time, we don't have any dedicated funding source. And you can look at projects that might be seen by the public as road projects, where you're doing ditching or improvements such as that. But ultimately, those ditches discharge. And they discharge into water courses, which ultimately just discharge into our watershed. And a number of municipalities have undertaken this on the tax levy. I'll cite some other leading municipalities adjacent to us, because it's dealing with source water. And there is a magnitude of expenditure for these that we'll be bringing forward to council, because there's the road and the ditching projects. There's also the stormwater management ponds that we have a whole litany of new ones with our new development. We have some limited older ones as well. But there will be some discussion at our water and wastewater budget time regarding stormwater expenditures of a capital nature and the appropriate funding source. And some municipalities have started, or have been for quite a while now, having a dedicated rate charge, separate and apart from their tax levy or their water and sewer rates. And we think it's something that would be mindful for consideration by council. With respect to this 30,000, I think this is one that we could take back in. Is it 50? I'm sorry, my eyes are, should have worn my glasses here. But with respect to the 50, I think we could take a look at it and report further on Monday as to whether or not there might be a different capital reserve and or other funding source rather than tax levy for it. So I think we'll can note that and take that back.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
So to clarify, was this included as part of the proposed tax levy increase that was presented to us, or would this be on top of it? Would it be treated as if it were a new initiative on the tax levy, or is it already built into the budget that's been presented to us?
Mr. Falchi.
Madam Mayor, through you, it is included in the budget, but I do want to just clarify, and you'll see this on the summary sheet for the capital projects. We have an annual contribution of tax-supported capital. That's what this is coming from. So every year we contribute in the neighborhood of about $450,000 to $470,000 to the capital program. And my understanding is that we have to maintain roughly that amount in order to continue to qualify for federal gas tax funding. So if we were to reprofile this tax funding, the director can correct me if I'm wrong, we would simply reallocate it then to another capital project, because it would be within the envelope that is available to capital projects.
Because we can't cut the budget, right?
I see the nodding, so that's great. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, so the next project is 19053, which is a large wheeled loader. This is a request for a new loader in addition to the current complement of one loader that we have. Loader is one of those pieces of equipment that's used on a daily basis by our group. And essentially there's a 12-year service life on these. The current loader that the town has is reaching the end of its service life. And by purchasing another loader, that would give us two loaders, one that could be set up at the new operations center and one back at the existing yard that would allow us to be able to adequately maintain and complete operations in both of those facilities. So timing-wise is really good in order to purchase this loader now. It takes about a year in order to take delivery of these, which would basically get us up and running for the 2020 season. So this particular loader they are expensive, but given the 12-year service life and the fact that we use them so frequently, this would be a really important purchase for our operations crew.
Any questions? I guess my comment would be that if we're using it on a daily basis and it's out of service, then that's a big problem for us. So at least if we have the second one on the go, the sooner the better. It's an important piece of our equipment, so, okay. Very expensive. Councillor Foster.
I'm just thinking, when the yard closes behind the arena, you would still be able to find use for 2 loaders, correct?
That's correct. This one, we would actually put a blade on the front of it, be used for winter maintenance at that facility as well.
I'm just thinking in the future, there could be a possibility where they don't need to be both full-size loaders. One could be smaller, depending on what you use it for, once you get 2 of them set up.
Through you, Madam Mayor, when it comes time to replace the existing loader, we can make that determination as to what sort of loader makes sense at that time.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, the next project is Capital Project 19054, which is the LED streetlight conversion strategy, pilot conversion project. So in 2019, we'll be coming to council with a report outlining our LED streetlight strategy. There's been a lot of adjustments and refinements to that over the last year or two from the initial strategy that we put together, and we're really starting to land on a really good proposal now. We'll be coming to council in 2019 with what that overall project looks like and what the overall strategy will be. This particular capital project is to put some funds together in order to complete the project, or a pilot project for those lights, in order to actually view them in the field. And I understand that we may be able to end up with some sort of partnership with a couple of the suppliers, whereby the suppliers would provide us with the lighting for free, and we would install them and pilot them on a 1-year basis. So we've got the industry partnering with us on this particular project as well.
Our new development, is it now putting in LED lighting?
Through Madam Mayor, yes, all the new development is LED. So this is, the retrofits will be for the older communities and the existing roads that are out there now.
At what point did we, were we able to have the developers putting LED lighting in? How far back, and how big were the projects that we're going to have to do that are still out there?
The current wave of development is all on the new LED lights. The I'd say pre-2015, pre-2015 would have been on the older high-pressure sodium.
So this is the beginning of something much greater.
That's correct, and we'll be able to provide you some additional details through the LED strategy report that we bring forward.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move ahead.
Next project, 19055, is the miscellaneous concrete repairs. This again is an annual program to repair deficient sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. We really have a pretty significant backlog of this work, so we have a couple of years of higher than normal funding that we proposed for this particular program, and we expect over the next 3 to 5 years to continue with these elevated levels, and then hopefully after that we will have dealt with our backlog so that we can return that to a smaller number.
Questions? Seeing none? Go ahead, please.
Okay, next project, 19056, is our pavement management program, data implementation for 2019. Again, alluded to this previously. We've got a couple of different data points that we've collected data for in the past 3 or 4 years, and prices are starting to come down on this now. Initially, the requests were for approximately $50,000 per year, and now that the partnership between the town, the region, and Witcher Stouffville is starting to take place, we're able to get the reporting done and that work completed for less. So now we're, instead of 50, we're down in the 20,000 range, and that will allow us to put forward our capital program and really take advantage of the pavement management software that's in place and the data that's been collected to date.
Any questions? Seeing none?
Okay, the next project, 19057, is radar driver feedback boards. These are fairly popular items to deal with our traffic management. The town currently has 4 boards, and we're looking to convert some of those, convert the boards to be solar powered, and purchase 3 additional, and retire 1. So essentially, we would have 6 boards at the end of the day, increase to our complement of 2, and all of them supported by solar powered power, so that they can be operational for a little longer than they can with just a regular battery. So this project is also being recommended for approval.
I seem to recall some time ago hearing about these radar boards that also had the ability to capture license plate numbers. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, these particular boards do not. They don't have camera facilities as part of them, but they have been very effective at reducing speeds wherever they've been implemented.
Very good. I can well imagine there'll be requests from every member of council here at probably 2 or 3 locations that they have. So they could be very busy. I hope they're on a trailer with good tires. Councillor Morton.
I think, Madam Mayor, what you were referring to was when Superintendent Slack spoke to us at our orientation. He mentioned about them being on the poles and taking license plate numbers and watching people using their phones and everything at the same time. So.
Any questions? Okay, move along. Thank you.
Okay, the next project is a rear discharge mower. This is a CPRC replacement, and really just replacing an existing piece of equipment that's currently in our inventory.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on.
Next project, 19059, is a road patrol 1-ton pickup truck. This particular vehicle has over 300,000 kilometers on it. So, you know, this is an example of a very well-used piece of equipment, and it is now ready to be replaced.
What year is this one?
I believe it's 2014.
Served us well. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move along.
The next project, 19060, is a supervisory vehicle. It's a new addition to the fleet, and we're looking at right now in the engineering department. We have a full-size pickup truck that we're looking to provide over to return to or to give to the operations group. And in exchange, we would take a smaller SUV vehicle that's a little better sized for our inspector in the development area. And again, yeah, there is some savings in terms of the cost of the vehicle, and it is a little more fuel efficient.
Have we looked at anything that is out of the box as far as fuel?
That's something that we're going to get into with the fleet strategy report that we come forward with later on this year. There may be some opportunities for some electric vehicles in our future, but we haven't really spec'd any of those yet, and we thought that we would do one more year like this until we brought that report forward.
I look forward to that. I think that there's some opportunities out there, and we might as well be leaders in it. Thank you.
Next project is 19061, which is CIS sidewalk plow replacement. So this particular plow is about 5 years beyond its service life, and it's one of those vehicles that we really don't want to hold on to for another year. So it's being recommended for replacement.
I'm not seeing any questions.
The next project, 19062, further to the comments from CAO Webster with regards to the stormwater. We have a stormwater rate study that we're looking to put in place this year that will look at some of the review some of the different possibilities for a rate structure and come back to council with a program that's well thought out and that has some good recommendations in order for us to get some funding in place in order to maintain our stormwater infrastructure.
Questions? Councillor Foster?
I'm just wondering if this is a project that's being undertaken by other municipalities within the N6, that there could be a possible partnership in the future?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we've actually been in discussions with a couple of the other municipalities that have done the stormwater rate, and there may be opportunity for some of the other ones if they want to embark on a stormwater rate to tag along on this one as well. But it is one of those emerging issues that all the municipalities are looking at. But your comments are noted, and we'll have that discussion with the other N6 partners.
Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am all for undertaking studies to assess our stormwater management systems to ensure that, I know we've had a report from the region recently identifying how full our ponds were and so on. My concern would be that we're spending money on how to set a new tax, and I would like us to get a little bit more creative. I know that other municipalities have implemented stormwater taxes, and personally I'm not interested in exploring that as a funding model. I'd like us to get a little bit more creative than simply introducing a new tax. I think our residents expect that their property taxes pay for municipal infrastructure, and if that includes stormwater management ponds, then it needs to do that. It doesn't have to be a new tax, it's carved out. So I resist this one. Thank you.
You resist the study?
Unless someone can explain to me that the study is something other than how to set a stormwater rate in order to introduce a stormwater management tax, then I'm not in support of this budget item.
Not the whole budget. Mr. Webster.
I think what the study's going to do is try to outline costs that might not be currently in our tax base or funding source base. Let's say that the public funding source base, which are of significance. So, and then the funding mechanisms from there would be up to council's discretion that they would choose to utilize.
I'm wondering, since we've had a question about it and an indication that someone's not interested, or unless they have more information, is there a possibility of getting a little more information on the study prior to passing the budget, so people have a better understanding of what the long-term goal is for this study? Councillor Roy DiClemente.
The reality is that our residents often pass by those stormwater management ponds and think they're naturalized areas, that we have some significant public education that we need to do as far as that those are, while they are lovely to look at and they attract wildlife and they create habitat, they're also working pieces of our municipal infrastructure. And so whether we're looking at, I mean, the verbiage here says it's an appropriate and sustainable funding model. If we can identify those costs and quantify it and come to us with a strategy on how those might be sustained. And one of those options, understandably, is a new tax, but there may be other options for us to explore, then I'm absolutely in support of that. But if we're simply saying, how are we going to set a new rate, and that's the first step in implementing this new tax, that's where I have an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And we've not had that discussion across here, so if we can get more information prior to that decision at budget, it leads us somewhere else that we have not had information on yet. So, okay, thank you.
Noted, and we will get some further details on that project. Moving along, Project 19063 is the traffic engineering vehicle. This is a replacement of a fairly large survey van with another one of these smaller SUV vehicles. Again, right sizing and getting something a little more fuel efficient and size appropriate for staff to do their inspections with.
Councillor Persichini?
To you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Molinari, do we have a co-op buying these vehicles? Do we kind of check with the region and try to save some bucks if we all buy at the same place or make deals?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we've tried that in the past. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But what we do now is at least we're bundling all of the town vehicles together, so that when it goes out, we're purchasing like vehicles and bundling those so that we're getting some economies of scale out of it. Depending on the timing when the region and others are going out to purchase, there may be opportunities to do that, and our fleet manager is very well plugged into the region and the fleet network in the N6, and if there are opportunities in there to do that, he's taking advantage of those.
I'm not sure who had their hand up first, so I'll take Councillor Crone and then Councillor Crothers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Molinari. Just building on what Councillor Persichini was asking, you mentioned about bundling vehicles together, and I certainly think that's a great procurement strategy. I was looking through the notes. I saw on some of the equipment, the maintenance equipment, like the lawnmowers and the tractors. I saw some competing brands, and does the policy going forward to try and keep one brand to help with parts and service contracts, things like that, or is it multi-brand strategy?
Through you, Madam Mayor, typically we'll put the specifications together so that we get the vehicle that is required that meets the specifications. We aren't so much brand specific. We typically outsource most of our maintenance requirements, so having one particular brand doesn't mean that we are carrying inventory specific to one particular brand in-house. It's, we rely on our mechanics to just come in and repair any of the vehicles that we have. So I don't know that if we had full in-house service delivery for that, it might make a difference in terms of stocking parts, et cetera. But when we're under the current scenario, I don't know that there would be any real savings achieved by being brand specific, and it really doesn't allow us to necessarily get the best vehicles for the purpose that we want to achieve.
Councillor Crothers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In addition to the work that each of these vehicles we're buying does, I think there's a secondary function of visibility to our residents. And I see sometimes the town logos on vehicles are very small, and I think it behooves us to have a larger logo so people are very well aware that these vehicles are town vehicles, and it's the town that's out at work serving the community, both from like an identification standpoint and a safety standpoint. Where there's someone parked at the end of my driveway, I want to know who that is, and to be able to see very clearly that it's a town vehicle, I think it's worth the extra dollars that it costs to put on a larger logo rather than a smaller one. So when we're looking at the logos on our vehicles, if we could lean to the larger side, that would be very serviceable. Thank you.
Do we have a policy on our logos? I know that we went through a rebranding some time ago. I suspect we have a policy with the font size and whatever.
Through you, Madam Mayor, we have, now that it's all centralized in one area, we can make those adjustments very easily. And I know that our manager has got a logo that looks nice. Whether we need to increase its size, we can certainly look at what that is. Maybe even bring a memo or report to council on what some of those options are and what they would look like.
I think that would be an advantage for all of us. Thank you. A wrap, yeah. We did have one at one time. A couple of trucks, I think. Any other questions?
Okay. So the next capital project, 19064, is traffic sign retroreflectivity inspection. This particular project is a requirement on an annual basis. The town has to go through and check the reflectivity of all of the signs and replace those that don't meet the retroreflectivity of requirements. So right now we're on year 2 of a 3-year contract, and this project is just to secure the funds in order to continue with that annual program.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Next project is Valley Mills Retaining Wall Geotechnical Investigation, Project 19065. Council will recall there was a fairly significant retaining wall in that area, the timber retaining wall that is failing. And about a year and a half ago, staff were very concerned that there may be slope stability issues in that area. And we were able to get a geotechnical consultant out there to tell us that and verify that the slope was stable for the short term. This particular project is to dive into that a little bit deeper and get a bit more of an estimate on what that slope stability is like, and look at some options in terms of what we might be able to do with respect to a trail through that area, and tie it into another project that we're doing with regards to some storm outfalls in that particular location. So there's a number of moving pieces that are attached to this particular capital project, but all of them are necessary in order to advance the overall project.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll go ahead.
Next project, 19066, is the York-Durham Line Road Safety and Embankment Improvement Design. Essentially, that's a lot of words to say that we think we need a guide rail along the East Town Line Road, and this would secure the funds in order to do the design so that we know the limits, so we can determine what the budget needs to be for the construction of that guide rail system.
And this will be in coordination with Uxbridge Township?
Yes. So the funding would be shared 50-50.
Thank you. Councillor Crothers?
So we had spoken earlier, and that the funding page, the funding line needs to be updated because the 15,000 that is coming out of the tax levy will be reimbursed once Uxbridge pays its half. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. There are some adjustments to this. The project cost is 15,000, and the town will be responsible for 7,500.
Not seeing any other questions. Go ahead. Oh, Mr. Velchik?
Madam Mayor, just before we break, I just wanted to make a couple of comments, so just whenever that's appropriate.
We have a couple more, I think, here, and I'd like to just go back and when we're finished to see if there's anything lingering. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, if I'm not mistaken, the projects that are left are capital projects related to water and wastewater. So we would just recommend that perhaps those be held until we come back with the water and wastewater budget, and at that point we could talk about the operating and capital together in a little bit of context, if that's okay.
So we'll put those on hold and do water and wastewater as one bundle. Okay, thank you. Now, we've been through a fair bit here. Are there any items that people would like to go back on, require more information, now's the time to say so. And I guess from staff perspective, if there's anything else that you could add to any of them that might have generated some questions, then that would be helpful also. Yes, go ahead.
I think we've noted a lot of the comments, and on Monday we'll report back with feedback on a number of them, of options that hopefully will assist in the deliberations.
Okay. So do we have any other areas we want to cover before a break?
Madam Mayor, the only thing I would like to distribute just before we break is we do have a listing that we've put together to assist you with all of the public input that we've received through our online process to date. There's about 15 pieces of input, which I think has been some pretty healthy input. I'd like to distribute that just before you break, and then maybe when we come back, we could walk through it with folks. I just thought you may want to take a few minutes over the lunch break and peruse it, but we'll walk through it with you after the break. And then the other thing that we'll do right after the break is we'll hand out and walk through the capital schedules. And then the one thing that is left is just to have a little bit of discussion, if you wish, in a little more detail. Maybe you're comfortable already, but with the staffing requests that are included in the operating budget, they're growth related. We have spoken about them, but there is separate sheets on those. And if there's any questions, I just wanted to make sure that Budget Committee had a chance to ask any questions you might have or discuss them. So that's how I would see the remainder of today going, if that works for you.
I think it should be a given that there will be some discussion on staff requests individually to understand exactly whether they're replacements or whether they're new, and what is that going to, how is that going to enhance the service to our residents. So I would expect that there will be questions, maybe not on all of them, but certainly on some. And I think that's, we have a motion. Sorry, I need a mover for this last piece. Councillor Persicini, all those in favor, and that's carried. And with that, we will take a recess, and I expect we may be waiting for a bite to eat. We pushed it back because of our morning the way it went, so I'm not sure that it is ready yet, but we won't be long. It'll certainly give us an opportunity to deal with some emails, etc. And so I would think that an hour should be fine. 1:45, does that give people enough time to handle the business that's been going on while we've been in here? Okay, with that, then we'll take a recess until. And we are resuming. I believe we have a couple of items that we need to pick up from before our break. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. If it hasn't been distributed already, we do have the reserve continuity schedule for you, as well as a listing of carry forward capital projects. Perhaps we could just have those distributed. And then if you'd like, we can provide just a little bit of an overview of what's in that information, and we can discuss it to the degree that you wish today, or you may also wish to take the information, there's a fair amount of it, to take it away and reflect on it, and we could sort of address any additional questions you might have on Monday as well. And I would also just remind committee members for tomorrow and Friday, in advance of Monday's meeting, if there's anything that's come out of these 2 days or the information we're handing out to you today, and if we can be of assistance in the interim, we will make whatever time is necessary to help individual members of council out as well.
Thank you very much. Now, do you anticipate that we have enough time on Monday to complete our task at hand, or do we have more than we need? I'm just trying to balance out today.
Certainly that depends on the nature of the additional deliberations you wish to have, but we, from the perspective of going through the budget material, you're almost complete now in going through the entire budget material. So from my perspective, I think you're in a really good position Monday to receive the additional information that committee's asked for. We can discuss that. That can be incorporated into your perhaps final deliberations, and I suspect that you'll be in a very good position for decision making on Monday. That's what I would believe.
Very good. And I have three addendums here now. One is uncommitted reserves and reserve fund balances. I have open capital projects, and I have 2019 business plan and budget deliberations public input that we have received. So I'm looking for suggestions on how we can address each one of these, whether it's today or some of these items that we have just received. It would appear would need to be a little longer than this week.
Madam Mayor, perhaps if it's okay with you, I'll just give a little bit of an overview of what's in each of these documents, just so that there's a consistent understanding, and I would also perhaps defer to the Manager of Development, Finance and Capital, just to speak to a couple of the items as well that might help you as you're looking through the list. So the first document I'll speak to is the public input received. So this is basically all input we've received so far through our various venues. The majority of it, I believe, is through the online submissions through the website. And certainly I would encourage budget members to go through it, and you'll see a variety of pieces of input here. From my perspective, a lot of it relating to residents' interest in particular areas of program and so on. And so that's something you'll just want to be aware of and consider as you go into Monday's meeting. And what I can also advise is if there is any additional input received between now and Monday, we will provide that on Monday morning so that you'll have the very latest information to assist you in your deliberations come Monday. So I don't know that it's helpful necessarily to go through it now, or maybe to leave it with Budget Committee members to go through, but certainly we're at the will of Budget Committee, whatever you prefer.
Mr. Lamanna?
Through you, Madam Mayor, my suggestion would be so that in keeping with open and transparency, that certainly these folks that took the time to provide public input, that my office go through the handout in terms of privacy, and if it's Budget Committee's will, I would suggest to publish it on today's agenda. We can go back, and then that you would just simply have a motion to receive the public input as of today.
Thank you. And then perhaps on Monday, we would be able to speak to specifics of it. Okay, very good. Okay. Want to do it now? Sure. Okay. So I have a motion to receive. Councillor Persuccini, all those in favor? And that's carried.
Madam Mayor, if I can, the second one I'd like to go through is what we refer to as the open capital projects. And that list is provided to you because there's a fairly extensive number of capital projects that you've already gone through in terms of new projects for 2019. But I think that it's very important in that context to understand which projects continue to be outstanding that were approved in prior years and that are in some various forms of completion or various stages of completion. And so certainly this is something that we could walk through briefly if you like, or we could leave with you to see if there's any questions. The one thing that I do want to mention on this is, in particular in the development services area, there's a number of projects that are have been around there for a number of years. We've got a new general manager in that's just started in 2019, And I think Mr. Ramuno and ourselves would like a little bit of an opportunity just to go through those and to maybe reassess those, rescope them. It may even be update budget figures, and then, if appropriate, perhaps come back for approval on those and with a fresh start. Because you can see, if you look at the page 3 of 3, that's where those show at the top of page 3 of 3. There's some projects on there going back to 2011. So those are several years, and so I think it's appropriate to for us to refresh those, and we'll work with the general manager to do that.
Would you suggest that we go through these now, and that one section with our new general manager leave until Monday, but the remainder that we have an opportunity now to bring council up to speed? Mr. Webster.
I think some of them are significant enough that we would propose now that they be, for discussion purposes, what it would mean, we would actually close these. The funds would not be committed, and we would rebudget new capital projects for this council to approve with this timeline, with the scope of works that they understand. And so maybe if we go, I wouldn't mind actually going through these to an extent. It is a working session on deliberations, and so we could either start with this one, or you could start at the very beginning. It depends what council prefers.
I think we start with this one. It's in front of us, and I know from myself, and I probably feel the same way as other members of council, we're aware over the years of projects that have been approved in budget, and we come back to staff and say, well, it's been approved, and so you tell the public that, well, it's been approved, and well, it didn't happen this year, but may be happening next year, and then you forget about it. And then you have the public come back to you and say, well, you told us or me that this in fact was approved in the budget. So I think particularly for new members of council, it will be important to have a little bit of understanding on what the project is and why it's still sitting. Obviously, if it was an easy one to do, it would have happened in the year that it happened. So there has to be some mitigating circumstances why it's back to 2011 or 2012 and still the project hasn't moved forward for a variety of reasons. So this, I think, would be very good time spent now in going through this, and so everyone understands what has been committed. And Mr. Valchek, the idea that perhaps they're not committed anymore, and we start again with a new slate for Monday with those that are going to be moving forward, and the funds will be released to go back into the coffers for other projects.
So on that note, if we may, if we're going to start with development services, Madam Mayor. And so we're still in transition. I believe I would like to ask Mr. Ramuno. He's, I guess, about 12th day on the job now, and I don't know if it's necessarily fair. So, but and Mr. Velchich does have some knowledge of this area as well from his past 4 months as interim. But maybe I could start off with the heritage property inventory review. It's $100,000 was budgeted last year. 0 was spent. And there's a new project this year called Heritage, I believe it's a list review and investigation of districts for $25,000. What we'd suggest is this $100,000 not be closed at this time, and that we look at the scope of the $25,000 project with some more specific deliverables and make sure we've got the right amount in that area. This is not a tax levy funded initiative. So we're hopeful that would be something we could bring back on Monday.
Questions? Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. My question is an overall question, just trying to understand this document that's before us. So this is money that has been approved in previous budgets, and the majority of it unspent. So the $20 million on the first page, where is that money now?
Madam Mayor, the money would stay in reserves until it's actually expended. And so when we do our year-end financial statements, our audited financial statements, you would see that money continuing to sit in reserve until it's actually utilized.
Okay, so when we then look at the reserves that we have, some of this is committed, and this is just put on our desk, so I don't know if there's a line on there that shows that, but is it showing on here, is it $20 million on here somewhere that I could see it?
Madam Mayor, for purposes of the reserve continuity schedule, which we'll speak about after we go through the Council's aware of not just what's the balance sitting in the bank account, but how much has been approved and committed that's not yet been expended, so that you know what is the net balance that you actually have available to work with.
Okay, and so again, just so I can understand this as we go through it, when there is a project that's on this as well as in the 2019 capital budget, that's additional funds. For instance, the Queensville Park redevelopment, there was $300,000 approved in 2017. Now you're asking for another $700,000, and this is just for phase one. So phase one is $1 million. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Not seeing any, we'll move through it, and I'm sure it'll be much clearer as we start to get some more detail.
If I may, the next one is a dated project and initially approved in 2014. And the thoughts at that time were, at a point in time, our official plan was adopted in 2010, and it was a requirement that official plans be updated every 5 years. And what I can tell you is all official plans that were adopted in 2010 have not been updated at this point, because we've been waiting for new growth plans, there's been servicing issues, and at this point in time, comprehensive review. And what will advise and instruct that process is the legislation introduced, or proposed legislation introduced yesterday in the new growth plan. And so what we're proposing, again, is that this $300,000 be returned to the reserve as an uncommitted, and that we rebudget in a new capital project for this year a more modest amount that we would like to probably see. And I would suggest something maybe in the neighborhood of a third, but we'll advise further on Monday, that would allow us to participate, potentially seek external expertise and assistance in these, moving forward, these MCR reviews. My advisements from colleagues are, rather than wait for the province and the region to be part of the discussion rather than be receiving direction. The third project, Urban Design Guidelines, I believe is largely finished, and I think we just have to true up the percent spent there. But I think there's an implementation that goes for this year, so that's one that did occur, and there is a small balance left to be spent. This project approved in 2012. At this time, it was before the Green Lane secondary plan was moving along. There was a notion at that time of servicing. I believe it's around when NGR made their acquisition of lands at the Highway 404. So we had a start and a stop at that time of this. And so really what this is the 404, Highway 404. These funds would most appropriately be returned to as uncommitted to the reserve, and that Mr. Ramuno, we work towards a new capital budget and for that we're working on for this year. So a new sheet, if we don't already have one. I don't believe we have one in that area at this point in time. The final one is the Queensville Town Centre urban design, and this is an interesting one again that was put in at the time. Council wanted a full review of the town centre, and discussions with the property owners at that time thought it was premature, and that they wanted to work towards getting more of the development built. So now we have phase one built. Phase two is as we know, is being marketed. One of the Council approved the design for the Queensville Healthy Active Living Plaza, and I think in that report it was clear that discussions and working with the private interests on how the two how our facility would integrate with the town center is very important. And again, I think we might want to take a look at that to to scope it, to at least make sure that the integration with our proposed facility is looked at as a priority with the private interest. So the reason we wanted to speak to this one, there's a lot of extensive and expensive projects here, and we think that the ones that where we haven't taken a lot of action on, it would be helpful to rebudget, rescope, and have this council put
Will we just keep going down the list?
So
for each?
that's it for me, Madam Mayor. I'll pass it back to our finance.
Pardon me. Madam Mayor, at this point, if you'd like, perhaps we could just go department by department and just go, but we're on page 3, so rather than flipping back and forth, perhaps complete page 3, and then we'll go to 1 and 2, if that's okay. So emergency and community safety services, perhaps just then we'll ask, can we have the chart distributed? Do we have the extra chart there? So we're on page 3 of 3. I don't mind I'll go to corporate services first, maybe just to give Deputy a couple of moments just to look at that, familiarize himself with the listing. We have 4 items on here. The DC study update, that's really a provision that we may or may not need. We've been very successful the last a couple of development charge bylaw updates to have done them successfully with no outside consulting support and no appeals. We do have a small provision there in the event that we would require some outside assistance, but quite frankly, we're hoping that the expenditure, when we're finished the process, really just a provisional item. The other 3 are quite dated. They came out of formerly when this function was part of the planning department. One of them was a community improvement program, grant program, and there was a provision of $10,000 to explore some community improvement program grants that we might provide to help move along with sort of development of business areas and so on. That's something that I think we need to revisit, and that project either eliminated at this point in time or updated. I'm going to say you may want to we'll have to determine, but this project stems back to a point in time when York University was actively looking for a location to place its next campus, and there was a budget established for that attraction process for East Gwillimbury to participate. You can see that there was some funds spent, but not nearly close to the entire budget. At this point, staff are not actively pursuing that project, so again, that's one that we may need to talk about and assess what, if any, effort should be going on right now, and whether there should be funds committed at this point, or whether we should be coming back at a more strategic point in time with a I would suggest that we take a look at this one, consider keeping part or all of this, especially in light of some of the comments this morning from Councillor Carruthers, and looking at whether we reprofile this to look at expanded downtown revitalization support. So again, in all of those cases, those 3 cases, to the degree that they stay, I think that the capital budget sheet should be updated, and they should be reviewed by council in a current context and perhaps reapproved.
Any questions? Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, the downtown revitalization, thank you for bringing that up. I noticed a number of comments been sitting there since 2012, and the residents have been chomping at the bit for something to happen on this. So I would hope that, you know, given that it was identified quite a number of years ago, we can get going on something soon. Thank you.
Mr. Webster.
Madam Mayor, just, it might be helpful, these are, some of these ones, especially post-secondary and they're very dated. Like now we're into year 7 of, would council like us to rescope an initiative on these as to what it might be? Like, it's nice to carry post-secondary attraction, but as administrator, there's no direction at all. It's like we're just having a reserve encumbered. And so I guess what we'll need to know is it a priority? Do we want to the reserve? I think that was sort of to clean this list up a bit might be a worthwhile discussion to have.
I guess my question would be to staff. Today or tomorrow, we don't seem to have anything from post-secondary. However, if 2 months from now, somebody comes and knocks on our door and they're in a position to at least start to assess and perhaps investigate the possibilities, where do we stand financially at that point? Go ahead, please.
Madam Mayor, so because this is capital funded and it's coming out of our primarily growth-related reserves, in front of council, discussing with you the opportunity at hand, and at that point, perhaps seeking some in-year direction and support to move forward. And if there was a budget requirement, there may not be a budget requirement in simply exploratory discussions and some initial conversation about opportunities and potential. But if it got beyond that, where we needed significant additional resources to create materials or to participate in a way that would actually require outside support of some form that required a budget, then we could easily come back to you at that time and in pretty short order make an in-year capital request. So I do believe there's a mechanism to deal with that, even if there's not an outstanding. We've got a fairly large amount that's been sitting here for some time, and perhaps if you did want to leave an amount outstanding, maybe staff could come back and at least scope that down a little bit so it provides a more moderate amount that we might need if we had to act quickly.
I guess the one part of it is the dollars. The other part of it is the projects themselves. They had merit, whether it was 2011, there might even be a 2010 here. And does it have merit? Does it speak to the goals and objectives of this council? And I think that they're two very different things. It's almost like having an opportunity to have a workshop at some point talking about this. Secondary school. So does that take it?
That's okay. That's the third handout that you have. And then the only thing that really is left, if you wish to go through it today, is the sheets that we have there on new staff, if there's a desire to go through and talk about those as well. But there's we're the bulk of the way through at this point. So if I can, I'm now referring to the document entitled Estimate of 2018 Uncommitted Reserves and Reserve Fund Balances. So just to let you know, this was organized a few years ago into categories to try and make it a little easier to cluster these and understand what the purpose is of these reserves. The working capital reserve is really an operating reserve that we would have in the event that we have unforeseen or time-specific operating pressures to assist with. And then you can see under program related, there's a number of them there. Just the one that I do want to point out, a couple of them, the winter operations, what we do try and do with winter operations, because it really fluctuates depending on weather patterns each year and so on, that to the degree that we may have extra money in the winter ops budget in a given year, we'd put money into the reserve. In a year where winter conditions warranted additional service, we would draw from the reserve. So it's intended to provide a little bit of a smoothing effect over time. Farmers market is really something we assist that group in terms of managing or sort of maintaining some of the funds that are used and generated through the farmers market. And then we have some capital asset renewal and replacement reserves, and those are reserves that come from generally tax or it could be sources other than growth, other than development-related fees. And you can see in there, there's the one that's the library reserve, and that's one, again, that we maintain here, but the library accesses and uses through request to council. And I think there was a request this morning for accessing the library reserve. And so you can see that amount there. And just to let you know, this schedule, if you go over to the far column uncommitted fund balance, I'll just look for a nod to make sure I'm correct in this, but it should already incorporate all of the projects that are before you and proposed. So should you approve the entire capital program in its current form, these would be the projected balances. Should you reduce the capital program, these balances go up, and should you add to the capital program, those balances could potentially go down. So that's just to put that into perspective. The development and fee supported category at the bottom, just to note that you'll recall from that section of the budget, we had a separate tab for that, and there were 5 areas that were budgeted in the development and fee supported budget, and this is the place that those funds come into. So as we collect development related fees, they go into these reserve funds. As those operations are carried on, those reserve funds are used to fund those operations. You may find in a given year that our operational costs are exceed fees coming in the door. You may have another year where fees coming in the door exceed operational costs, and so those reserve amounts will fluctuate. But our goal always is to ensure that they are sustainable over time. I can tell you that going back several years ago, around 2010 timeframe, we had some pretty significant shortfall positions in our development fee related reserves. We undertook some significant work internally to reassess fees and cost structures and so on, and I am personally very pleased with how those reserve funds have turned around in that period of time. Then you go on to page 2. There's development, water and waste water rate funded reserves.